Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, May 18th, 2022, 6:30 p.m. here at Frederick School. First order of business is a call to order and a roll call, please.
Weedman.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Braden.
Here.
Albert.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
And Nash.
Here.
Okay, that gives us a quorum. So next I need the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next I need an approval for tonight's agenda, including the personnel addendum that you got earlier tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Miller.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Albert.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
And Nash.
Aye.
Okay, and this is our first opportunity for public comments. Go ahead and call the first one.
Jill Bindwell, please.
Birdwell.
Birdwell. No, push the button.
Yeah, just push the button so the red light comes on. Thank you.
Am I good now? Okay. My name's Jill Birdwell. I'm a Grace Lake resident, and I just wanted to come to say thank you for all you have done with helping with the LGBTQIA community. And I just wanted to also let you know on behalf of PFLAG that the Pride Parade is set for June 12th at noon, downtown Grace Lake. And we are excited. This our second parade, and we are doing a walking parade with floats and groups and people, and we can't wait for it to be one big love fest. But I did want to say also, I just really appreciate all that you're doing. We have a lot of issues right now with people, in particular kids are being targeted in that community. And as a mother of a gay son, and I've had 3 boys come through the D46 and D27 school districts, and now a daughter at D46, I can tell you that my son would have not thrived the way he did if it wasn't for school boards like yourselves. And it was very hard for him through high school, but we have great schools, and we have great school boards, and very welcoming. And I can't imagine what it must be like for those children that don't have that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sally Gill.
Good evening. I'll be reasonably brief, but I felt it was very important since our last meeting to come back up here and speak to you all and our community again. I wanted to reiterate our community's support of you. Since our last meeting, my public comments, speaking on behalf of most of our parent community, have been shared on extremist, hate-filled social media platforms. I am not sure why such platforms would want to include our words of truth and factual information, but nonetheless, we're very grateful. So to those that have done that, I commend you for bringing some sense of truth to your Twitter feeds. Well done. We will continue to shed light on your misinformation, so please feel free to share this message. 13 years ago, my family moved to Grays Lake to create a gentler life for ourselves. We had heard so many good things about this community, particularly the level of education in schools. What I discovered about this community then has sustained itself to this day. A beautiful, kind, tolerant community where all are welcome. And I am so thankful that what I have experienced in our schools where my children go reflects that goodness every single day. As an important side note, it is worth mentioning here that since the inception of public schools in America in 1830, funded by public tax dollars, Their purpose has been to nurture the makeup and values of our society. So how fortunate we are that society has changed since 1830, and that our schooling has continued to educate about and reflect that change. Where the journey of equality and tolerance continues, our schools mirror that bumpy road. Had we kept education in 1830, only wealthy, white, male, Christian folks would be attending schools. Thank goodness we have grown and changed to include everyone in the opportunity of a lifetime. I can only conclude that those who object to a diverse, inclusive education that reflects our ever-changing society are actually afraid of it. There can be no other explanation to invent misinformation about how our schools educate our kids. Of course, we all want what is best for our children, for them to be safe, and that is why I appreciate our school districts so much. One of the many things I continue to experience with my kids' educators and all who support them is their transparency. Everything I need to know about my kids' education is at my fingertips. I can access my kids' assignments in their portals. I can email the teachers and administration anytime. If I have any concerns, there is no need for me to invent them. I can simply talk to the teachers or administration literally anytime. It bears repeating, public schools have always reflected the real world and prepared our children for it. Social, emotional education, as well as academics, go hand in hand. Most parents agree. We are deeply grateful to our educators for helping us to raise informed, tolerant, successful, kind children here in Grayslake. It literally takes a village. Our children, because of you, are prepared not only to succeed, but continue to bring empathy into the world when they fly on from this nest. And that is a true testament to all of your work. Aristotle once said, "Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all." So thank you again. We are grateful for you and all that you do.
Thank you. Do we have any others? Nope, okay. All right, so that'll close the public comment for that session. And next, we have a presentation by the Student Environmental Council. And I see a whole lot of students over there.
Thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm Abby Petrozinski, the Volunteer Educator Facilitator for the Student Environmental Council, a committee of the CCSD 46 Board of Education. This group of students was created as a part of the nationwide 2022 Building Learners Cohort, an educational program run by the U.S. Green Building Council. The cohort is composed of classes or extracurricular groups of students from grades K through 12 across the country whose goal is to use buildings as learning labs, not only to teach sustainability concepts, but also to teach traditional curricular objectives. The US GBC Learning Lab is also available as a subscription to over 600 lessons, activities, and resources that encourage student leadership, sustainability literacy, and real-world action. Our 10 students have learned about building operations and their impact on the environment in weekly meetings since January. They range in age from 7th through 12th grade and have gathered 12 months of various categories of building data, not only from Grayslake Middle School, but also the Grayslake Library, Grayslake Central High School, and Grayslake North High School. With this data, they will hopefully be inspired to identify how they can make a positive impact on climate change. Our students have also been mentored by board members Christy Miller and Jessica Albert, Rebecca Gordon, and D127 Director of Buildings and Grounds, Dan Gonzalez. I am so proud now to turn it over to our creative and hardworking students to introduce themselves, and then to the GMS building team, Annabelle Zook and Ava Petrozinski. So first, they'll introduce themselves, and I hope they're behind me. There you go. And just pass the mic and say who you are.
I'm Ava Petrozinski, and I'm an 8th grader at GMS.
I'm Annabelle Zook, and I'm also an 8th grader at GMS.
I'm Reed Thibodeau, and I'm a senior at Grayslake Central.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Miller, and I'm a sophomore at Grayslake Central.
Hi, I'm Hannah Hahn, and I'm a sophomore at Grayslake North.
I'm Paula Schumacher, and I'm a 7th grader at GMS.
I'm Caitlin Brady, and I'm a 7th grader at Park.
Hi, I'm Michael O'Keefe, and I'm a homeschooled senior.
All of these are buildings around the world that mimic nature. They were built to look like a bird's nest, a flower, and the wings of a bird, but also for energy efficiency, such as utilizing natural light. But is this what we mean when we say we are advocating for green buildings in our community? Those buildings were specifically made for energy efficiency and created to improve our blend in the environment. What we are trying to do is communicate how we can try to improve the decision-making about the buildings in our community and find out the areas of improvement by gathering data for specific buildings in Grayslake. Our goal as students is to help raise awareness to improve these buildings. We hope to do this through gathering benchmark data that can be used to show improvements over time.
This is the racetrack for the score of GMS. The score is 74 out of 100, and the national average is 55 out of 100, so we are doing quite well compared to that average. We will look a bit deeper into these scores later. A green building is a building that uses different methods such as green walls, solar panels, composting, and recycling to create a sustainable building and help our environment. Green building also helps us to focus on the smaller aspect of what buildings contribute to climate change, since often we think about things like car emissions, but we forget about the differences that our buildings make. If we work on the issues our buildings has, we could higher our ARC score and even strive for LEED certification, which provides opportunities to our school and shows the community what we are doing.
ARC Scoroo is a technology company that is affiliated with Green Business Certification and the U.S. Green Building Council. ARC Scoroo believes that performance in the future of green building is created the ARC Performance Platform to help create better buildings and places for people and the environment. ARC empowers its users to understand and enhance their sustainability performance, promote human health and well-being, and contribute to a higher quality of life. The ARC platform helps people to collect benchmark data to improve their building sustainability performances. The platform gives you a score out of 100 using the categories waste, water, human experience, energy, and transportation. You can see the score per category and an overall score. These numbers can help you compare your building to others, as well as look back on past scores and make goals for the future.
In making our buildings more sustainable, we aim for energy sufficiency. This is essentially striking a balance between efficiency and utility, doing everything we can to improve sustainability while recognizing that we need to be realistic in our goals. Energy use is very important in buildings' overall environmental impact. For example, large buildings such as schools use a huge amount of energy, and the energy created from fossil fuels has a negative impact on the environment. Therefore, reducing energy is extremely beneficial and important for the environment's sake. Sustainable energy is one of the best ways we can reduce our use of fossil fuels, as it supplements traditional energy and allows us to use the same amount of electricity with a much cleaner impact. In buildings, solar panels are used to generate clean electricity. Solar panels are so successful as they emit no greenhouse gases, reduce reliance on fossil fuels, require little to no maintenance, and they save a large amount of money, with surplus energy even being sold back to the power company.
So at GMS from 2019 to 2020, the solar generation, the solar panels on the roof generated around 840,207 kilowatt hours of electricity. For reference, this is around 78 times the U.S. average for a single customer. So this is really, really huge, and we're really pleased with that. So this shows how much energy large buildings can use, because that's really only a fraction. But at the same time, it shows how much energy solar panels can generate and save from fossil fuel generated energy. This also saved $74,000 from taxpayers approximately, really amplifying the solar panel successes. So we're really pleased with the solar performance, and we hope to see continued solar energy use as well as energy reductions in other ways when possible, which we will talk about a little bit later.
As we strive for sustainability within our communities and our buildings, it's important to recognize the role that water has to play. As of 2015, the U.S. uses almost 322 billion gallons of water each day, with the average citizen wasting around 30 gallons per day. In terms of our buildings, we use water on the daily, whether that be for cleaning, cooking, heating and cooling systems, fire safety, anything like that. A lot of our water usage is very justifiable. It's water waste we need to be considerate of. For example, leaving on a sink for an extended period of time could waste almost 90 gallons of water a day. On a larger scale, water treatment facilities that provide our buildings with clean, fresh water can sometimes require almost 30 billion kilowatts of electricity. As you can tell, water is extremely important in achieving sustainability. However, we must also focus on other forms of waste, such as solid waste, which my teammates Ava and Anima will tell you about.
In a 2016 World Bank study, it was shown that cities around the world generated about 2 billion tons of solid waste. Waste is important because it makes an impact. We are constantly just throwing things away without thought, but we need to be recycling and composting since we are given the chance to. If we don't think about the trash we create or what we do with it, it all just ends up in the landfills and more methane is released into the atmosphere, which warms the earth, impacting our climate. By reducing the trash that gets thrown away can actually be a financial benefit and help us cut disposal costs. To improve our buildings, we can focus on buying more compostable and recyclable things and doing these things as much as possible.
At GMS a couple of weeks ago, we collected all the trash and recycling around the school to get an accurate score. During the lunch period, we found that over half of the trash produced by the building is compostable. So if we could make that an option, the disposal costs could decrease and would definitely decrease what we send to the landfill.
At the same time that the interior world of a building is important, the exterior of the building and the area it inhabits is just as important. While buildings are the focus of this, the building cannot be taken out of the general area it inhabits. So, for example, in Grace Lake, we actually do a pretty good job of this, as we have bike paths everywhere, we have streets, and we have a lot of housing areas all spread out, which makes it easier for schools. Like Woodview, for example, is in the middle of a pretty big neighborhood, which allows it to score very well on something like this. At the same time, stuff like cars and buses would be much worse for the environment in terms of the impact if the building was harder to access. However, there's still, of course, a problem, as a lot of people depend on cars and buses. We even have some nice bus systems, but some ideas we could do is a bike or walk week. But thankfully, most of the schools are pretty accessible for biking and walking.
Human experience is the way you feel inside of a building. In ARC, there is a survey that is generated where it asks you how you feel inside the building and how you got there that day. The first question asks you, one way. What vehicle or bike, or did you walk, vehicle, bike, public transit, and how many miles was it to your house? And the second question asks you, how did you feel inside the building today? You answer on a slider ranging from extremely unhappy to extremely happy, and you answer a few questions asking, what did you like about the building? Light, is there nice air inside? Is the sound quality nice? Just to name a few. And then indoor air quality is the quality of the air inside a building. Indoor air quality in ARC is measured using two scores, the carbon dioxide score and the TVOC, or total volatile organic compound score. These are added up using a portable air quality monitor and imported into ARC. Bad indoor air quality includes having inflamed lungs, nausea, and headaches, just to name a few.
Currently, we are doing well compared to an average score. Like I said, is only 55 out of 100, whereas we are at 74 out of 100. Our solar panels are providing great amounts of energy to our school. Our waste score is doing well, but if we were composting, we could increase our score and help our school to be much more sustainable. We are also already recycling. However, I don't think it's encouraged nearly enough, and we should especially have teachers reminding students to do so throughout the day. The human experience is a bit harder to judge because we did have middle schoolers taking the survey, and we're not sure if they were being completely truthful, and this leads us to being a bit below average in this category. Our transportation and water scores are doing well, but of course we should always be striving to make these better.
Once again, 74 out of 100 is the overall score for GMS, 30 out of 33 for energy, mostly because of the solar panels on top of the school, 13 out of 15 for water, 6 out of 8 for waste, 13 out of 14 for transportation, and 12 out of 20 for human experience, which is exactly how you feel in the building itself. We are above average, but as you can see, there are some areas of improvement.
Throwing away your food in the garbage and then going to the landfill causes methane gas to be released into the air, and that can cause 1 million premature deaths each year. But if you take your food scraps and compost them, that causes no methane gas and adds nutrients to the soil. It improves both air quality and soil health.
Building off of what Caitlin said, we want to propose using the cat compost idea that she had. We are able to make bigger bins with the elementary school mascot, then we could work with the younger kids at the elementary schools to engage them a couple times a month with compost. Using student council, students at the elementary school that are in student council could take leadership and make posters for the mascot composters. These would help the younger students understand what to compost out of leadership from the older students. As for Sprouts, I remember it being an after-school program run at Woodview and Meadowview. It would be good to have it up and running again at some level. Maybe the compost could be reused in the gardens and the students could use the soil to grow their own plants.
Another idea is having a natural light day. This would just be using the lights from outside and turning off the lights inside and try to use that as much as possible, even though it might not be possible to have it in every building, just utilizing that. Another idea is having a water bottle booster. So selling metal reusable water bottles and encouraging students to use these instead of the plastic one-use water bottles that a lot of them have. Another idea is tray collection. This comes from that we need to be collecting the trays at the end of lunch, but a lot of the time we're using the styrofoam ones instead of the plastic ones that we do have. If we were able to use the reusable trays and just have a way of getting them back in there more efficiently, this could be really helpful. The last idea is very self-explanatory, just having a walk or bike to school week, and it's encouraging students to do that.
Do you guys have any questions?
Looks
I
like
have
we-
a.
There you go.
I have a few questions, so hopefully my colleagues don't mind me having the floor for a moment. First of all, outstanding job. I believe I heard in your vision statement when you first started, you wanted to inspire buildings to become learning labs. You guys are an inspiration, period, for the due diligence that you brought to this project, this initiative, this data. So you should really all feel really proud of yourselves. So I'm glad. Now on to my slew of questions. All good. So as a board, many times we're challenged with prioritizing where we're going to spend our dollars, how we're going to spend our dollars. There are 2, 4, 5 categories that you captured here. What would be your recommendation to the board as to which one of these to prioritize above all others and why?
I feel like the waste one is really important because it's like a big problem. There's lots of waste being produced at the lunches, and it would be really good to like focus on that one a lot more.
Yeah. From this ARC score, it looks like the data supports that as well, right? To that end around waste, I know you said that there was a lot, and I apologize, I forget the poundage that you guys cited. But in addition to composting, did you guys think of any other way that we could reduce the waste? So I know it's been brought up in prior board discussions around addressing food insecurity for students in our district as an example. Have you guys given any other thoughts as to other ways in addition to composting that we can reduce waste?
Well, I think a more obvious answer is just encouraging people to recycle a lot because we aren't really, especially I know like in our classes, we use a lot of paper and things like that. And we aren't really reminded to recycle. And I think just reminding kids to do that would definitely be helpful, especially when we were doing the waste audit. There wasn't a ton of recycling in the bins, and there was things that could have been recycled in the trash. But then also just trying to get kids to use less water bottles, use less of things that they're only using one time.
Yeah, but in terms of like what's in the trash, like what are you seeing in there? Like are you seeing like full lunches being discarded, sandwiches, burgers, juices?
When we were doing the waste audit, there was like full pieces of food in the trash that probably could have been composted and wouldn't have had to end up in the landfills.
Yeah.
Another option, just even whole bananas in the peel or bags of chips. So if there is a way, food insecurity, that would be something to consider. I'm not sure about health code, but that's something that they...
Yeah. Certainly an opportunity with this data to have a tiered approach, right? Like first give it to somebody else who's still hungry, right? Second, then compost. And then last, bottom resort, right, would be to throw in the trash.
One other thing that was really brought to mind is even purchasing. When you go to purchase any materials for the district or for lunches, minimizing even the packaging that the products are. So if there is a way to cut costs because packaging costs have been reduced, that's just something to take into consideration.
Absolutely. I thought about the cost factor when the discussion was covered around the trays, that the trays right now are styrofoam, hence they're being discarded as opposed to using the plastic trays that could be recycled. So that's also a cost saving measure there as well. So good job. Thank you.
Christy? Good? Okay. Anybody else?
I want to echo Ms. Nash's compliments to you all. Thank you for bringing this to us and for all the work that you did. It's truly amazing. We love having students here and getting your perspective, so I value it so much, and I really appreciate it. I'm just thinking about composting and knowing that our district serves 7 communities, as indicated by our lovely new logo, and Grays Lake is just one of them, but as a Grays Lake resident, I know that our village has a composting program, so I'm curious if among maybe some of those other communities, that if you know of, other communities that compost or potential partnerships with villages to help schools do more. So just a thought. I don't know if that was a question or a thought, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, partnerships are wonderful. So, yeah.
But thank you again so much.
Thank you very much for your time.
I'm so sorry, I don't want you to run away too fast, so hold on for a second. As the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching, Learning, and Assessment, I can't let something go by. And so one of the things I noticed that you brought a visual aid. And so I would love to know what the visual aid was or an example of the visual aid. No, I saw a bucket. And so I was hoping that someone could share what that was and how that might work or what that was a model of, because that's really important for our learning too, to have those connections.
This was all Caitlin's idea, so explain what that is.
So this is a cat composter, and it's used to have like kids want to compost more because it's a animal.
Feed it.
Yeah, you feed the cat, like I was doing with my paper. I was tearing it and feeding it. So, yeah, you'd feed the cat with like your food scraps, and then you'd put like all the like soil like in your garden, and then it's, yeah.
So is that meant to be like a take-home kit so that we could continue this whole process at home, or is that meant to be a bigger model for in the lunchroom, or for example?
Yeah, either one would work.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. It's just important. I saw you took the effort to make some ideas. And so, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thanks.
Thank you to all of you. I did have a question too.
Oh.
Yeah, I think I might have.
Before you all disappear.
I think I had one too before
Abby
everybody
tried
else.
to Abby
Do you
tried
want to
to
go
speak
first,
out.
Stephen? Do you want to go? Okay.
I didn't want to pull everybody back.
Since we already pulled you back, thank you for coming back. And thank you for your presentation tonight. It was very informative. And I was wondering if there was anything that you learned in this process of doing this that surprised you, or something that you know will carry with you in your journey as you continue on in life.
I mean, something that seems obvious to me now, but I didn't really think about before I did this, was the actual connection between how sustainability affects the people within our community. And I think just doing all this research, it's really become apparent how much environmentalism has an effect on our actual people, and they're not two separate issues. So that was definitely something I learned.
Stephen, did you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll echo what all my colleagues have said, and thank you, especially for the visual aid. I love colored graphs. So, I wish, and this is really something important for me to be able to see this score, because it shows some of the things we're doing. It shows what we can improve on, and so I really appreciate that. So, I think one of the questions that stems from that, maybe not even a question, but maybe just something to consider, is I'd love to hear the ideas that your committee has for sharing that narrative and that story with the community as a whole. We're all sitting around this table and we're all sitting in this audience, but I love what you shared tonight, and want to show the community what you are doing and what we can be doing as a board, and what the school district can be doing as a district, and how we can all help each other. And you don't necessarily have to answer that, but I'm wondering what, some of the ideas you might have in the back of your minds for sharing that narrative, sharing that story, getting it out to the high school, to the community, things that you might work on in the future, because I want to know how I can support it and how we can support it, and share that story.
So at this time, nothing is finalized, but we will have a continuation of this group in some form in the future. So we would like to provide you guys continual updates on everything. And as well, for kind of spreading it within the schools, we really are just trying to be kind of grassroots with this. It kind of starts with us, and we'll go to the boards, and as well, all of our campaign ideas are student-led for the most part. So we're really trying to grow that base from the students to the students.
That's wonderful, and I think the Bike and the Walk Week is a fantastic idea.
One final point I meant to make is the ArcScore platform is free for anybody. You can plug in your own home's data, and you can generate a score for yourself. So if you go to arcscoru.com, it's SKORU is how you spell Skoru. Yeah, I did it for our house, and it was pretty neat. Thanks.
Mr. Weedman, I have questions too. Uh-oh.
You're not off the hook yet.
I know. Got to stay there. Again, thank you all so much, and thank you to the parents and guardians that supported this project as well, because you had to allow your children to do that and be in this multi-age group and work together, so thank you for that. Students, I have two questions, and I would be thrilled for an answer to either one. I'm curious if this has changed anybody's own habits in any way. And I'm also curious if this has caused anyone to think differently about their future careers.
Well, this did make me think a lot more about what I'm throwing away. Like, I think, and every time I'm at lunch and I get hot lunch and I throw the tray away, I'm like, oh, like I'm like, oh, that's not good. Like, I want to like watch more what I'm throwing away and what I'm like buying at the store. That's like throw away, you know. And it actually, we found out that it's like a job to like a green building scientist, architect, and you can. Wait, you explain it, 'cause you know more.
So we were just doing a project in school, and we were researching careers, because we've been in different classes in both math and science. We were looking at careers this past week, and it was something interesting that we were found, and both of us were researching into that then, and just trying to look at that and see that it is something that you can go into, and it's something that interests both of us.
We need you, so please do it. Thank you.
All right, now I think you're off the hook.
I know this group a little bit, and I know there are more answers to this. I specifically know, Michael, that you have an answer to this, given where you're going to school in the fall. And Paul, I think you have one too, and I know the rest of, and Sarah, I know you have one too.
As someone who's going to college for architecture next fall, I hate to burst your bubble, but no, I've always been kind of a stickler about like environmental stuff. Like, I pick up garbage on my walks and throw it out, and my friends always get mad at me, like, Michael, we don't have a recycling. How can you not have a recycling? You're home. But, no, I definitely think the experience of this whole LEED thing is definitely going to be very helpful in the future in design buildings and that entire experience. So I'm grateful for that.
I mean, environmentalism has always kind of been a part of my life, specifically through my mom. She's always encouraged it. But even just doing all of this research, something simple I've started doing more often is bringing in a reusable water bottle. And in terms of like the career paths, I've always known I've been really passionate about sustainability, but doing this project has really led me to believe that I think that's where my future lies. I think I want to build a career off of environmentalism and protecting both the people in our communities and our environment. So, thank you.
So I know for me, I'm definitely more mindful about what I'm doing. So I know, like, obviously in elementary school, everyone's like, oh, turn off the lights when you're out in the room. But now I'm really making sure to do that because before it just really wasn't brought to my attention how harmful that can really be. And as for career paths, I'm planning to go into law. And specifically now, I am really interested in environmental law. So.
One last clap. Okay. All right, so next would be our board reports. Can anybody hear me?
I'll get us going.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess I would be remiss if I didn't start with our colleagues, Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Albert, for being sponsors of the Student Environmental Council. So they did an outstanding job, and you know, this was your brainchild. And so thank you both for your thought leadership to bring this forward. It was really awesome. Second, I would like to thank, did I say thank? Thank, as in thank you, to Amy Gluck. So as part of preparation for our board meeting, for those of you who don't know, we receive board packets, and one of the things in our packets for this particular meeting was around our consolidated district plan and grant writing. And I was just really thoroughly impressed by the comprehensive, first of all, I think it was like 42 pages worth of this application, very comprehensive, detailed insights as to why it's important for our district to receive the grant, what the funds will be used for to further enhance our work around equity and inclusion for all of our students that transcends all the way down to our hiring practices for teachers, principals, staff, et cetera. So I was really thoroughly impressed. I know grant writing is an art of its own, and so I wanted to give a special thanks to Miss Amy Gluck for the job well done on that.
Okay. Christy? I'm just going to go around the corner. That's all right.
I wanted to just let everyone know I have been talking with a person who works at Allendale. His name is Jordan Lesnick. Oh, I just lost it. Bennick? Lesniak. Anyway, and he works at Allendale, which is a residential treatment center on 120 in Lake Villa. And this residential treatment center is for students who have sustained ongoing trauma. And they have 120 acres, a whole bunch of different services for these students. He has offered to set up tours for us this summer in June and July. There's 6 possible dates, so you'll have an email in your box tomorrow. And if you are interested, the CEC is interested in learning more about mental health so that we can help kids outside the classroom, whether it's a play date or an after-school activity that we're carting them to or something that we're organizing through PTOs. So if you are at all interested in joining us for one of those tours, you're more than welcome. Again, the dates will be in your mailbox tomorrow morning.
Okay. Stephen? Christy?
Good. I get to go first and scoop Dr. Mack on Fred Vinia. Fred Vinia was amazing. And I just wanted to give a huge shout out to everyone at Frederick, from the music staff all the way down to everyone who helped set up and take down. It was so much fun. It was amazing to see everyone out in their chairs. Our local music festival, the Disney thing was awesome. Mr. Rivera as Bruno, I mean, you just can't really top that. But the student performances were incredible, and just wanted to say that our music program just never fails to impress. So I'll leave a little bit for you, Dr. Mack.
I will agree.
The second thing I wanted to bring up, and thank you for Ms. Birdwell for reminding us in public comment, but I did want to invite my other board members to join me on the 12th at the Pride Parade like we did last year. Last year it was a blast. It was brand new to Grays Lake. We ended up going down Washington Street at 40 miles an hour in the back of a convertible because we had to obey traffic laws. This year, it's a closed street, so we can actually go slow and be safe and enjoy ourselves. So I'll reach out to everyone individually and see if you can make it, and I think it would be super fun to do together again. It was really, really fun last year.
I want to echo my colleague, Ms. Nash, about the very thorough report about the grant writing from Amy Gluck, because I learned about a lot of things that I didn't even know existed in our district, such as GAIN, Growing Authentic Individual Networks. So, and there was even more, but I'm not going to mention it now. So thank you. And then also to reiterate the music program's strength, I was able to listen to I think it was the GMS Wind Ensemble at the state competition. I made sure I got on and listened during the live stream of the concert, and it was so beautiful. So thank you to those musicians and to the band director, Mr. Thomas.
Stephen?
I will definitely echo my colleagues about the concert last night. It was wonderful. It's nice to be back together. Congratulations to everybody.
Okay. We are up to Dr. Glickman for the superintendent report.
Sure thing. Well, I'm gonna start by helping out my our new friend Amy Gluck, who's here in the room and is wondering why she's getting all these thank yous. And so just to clarify, the Consolidated Report is put together by a team, but somebody's name has to go on it, and it's common for it to be the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, which is what Amy will be, who she will be when any questions come about that report. So it was actually put together by Mr. Lewis, Mrs. Lorenzo, I believe Dr. Diaz, Mr. Wildman, and, and also, I'm sorry, and also Amanda, so Mr. Woodruff. So I know, Amy, you would just be upset if you got all the credit and all these people did all the hard work. But remember her for next year, please, and thank her then. Okay?
Thanks for that clarity, Dr. Glickman, and thank you all. Job well done.
There you go. We are always a team, for sure. I'm going to hand this off next to Chris Woke, who's going to talk with us about staff retirement for a moment.
Yes, I am excited to announce that tomorrow we will be getting together in person to celebrate the retirees for 2022, as well as 2021, as well as 2020, because those people were not able to join us for an in-person celebration. I'd just like to read through our retirees for the past 3 years quickly so that they have their names spoken out loud in case you're not at the celebration tomorrow or if they don't, or if they're not there. So 2022 retirees include Pam Becker, Moira Caniff, Patty Fishbein, Terry Goff, Mr. Paul Lewis, Joni Lubrich, Sue Murrow, Jim Quinn, Joan Ramatar, Quinn Ribery, Judy Spector. Our 2021 retirees include Maureen Bidow, Tina Moore, Lisa Henriksen, Tammy Lowy, Diane Novotnik, Deborah O'Connell, Julie Pacheco, Betsy Perry, Carol Rappaport, Jill Rosner, Kelly Schmidt, Patty Sloan, Robin Tracy. And last but not least, our 2020 retirees, Deb Gary, Keith Grinnell, Catherine Grunwald, Kathy Harold, Leanne Pickens, Marlo Richardson, Ruth Schneider, and Clay Trahan. We hope that those that are not able to join us because they may have moved away in the past 2 years or they have other plans, I hope they're enjoying their retirement, and we look forward to long days of sitting in the sun and enjoying themselves.
Thanks, Chris. All right, and we'll hand it over to Mr. Wildman, who has 2 updates. One related to food service, which is very nicely connected to the presentation we just had from the Student Environmental Council, and I've also asked him to speak with you about a conference that he and Mr. Halpern recently attended.
Thank you. I attended the Illinois Association of School Business Officials IASBO annual conference from May 3rd through May 6th. I was able to attend many sessions, including legislative updates from attorneys and advocates, updates on the teacher retirement system. I had a really great session called Building Your Brand and managing a capital improvement program, as well as attending an administrative academy on sustainability. I was fortunate to also present at the conference with 2 fellow CSBOs and a board member. That board member was from District 200 in Wheaton, and the presentation was looked at effective ways to communicate during highly stressful situations. So it was a really good presentation. It was a lot of fun. Mr. Halpern was also in attendance as a fellow board member, as a fellow IAS board member. Second thing, based on conversations that took place on the May 4th board meeting, we are working with ABBA on some of the discussion points that were raised. We've asked them to investigate using recycled or recyclable materials in our food supplies. They're working with the health department about introducing share tables. Share tables are what we can share through the health department, so we have to work directly with them. This is something that other districts do, so we will follow their lead in introducing them under appropriate guidelines. Just want to make one point that we do only have dishwashers at Park and GMS, so we are somewhat limited to what some of the schools can bring back regarding non-disposable materials and supplies. But we are having conversations and look forward to bringing you an update as we know more.
Thanks, Chris. All right, and then I wanted to remind everyone that Sunday, June 5th, is 8th grade graduation. GMS begins their graduation at 1 o'clock at Grace Lake Central High School football field. And then we have Park at the same location at 4 p.m. We are really hoping for good weather, but we do have a plan to be indoors in the field house if we have bad weather, but keep your fingers crossed. And then I wanted to talk for a moment about the fact that at our last board meeting, we shared our new district logo. You're looking at it right now on the screen. We immediately began using it in place of our old logo. Of course, we're carefully scouring all of our materials to find out where we need to replace things. So, you know, you will continue to see our old logo peeking out now and again, which is great, right? Still the past is important to us. We've had a very strong positive reaction to our logo. Just yesterday, I heard a parent talk about how the joyful stance represents the joy of learning, and that this is a joy we want our students to feel. So I love that and quickly wrote it down. It was so nice to hear. I did want to say a word about how we came to adopt the new logo. We were glad not to have to pay a designer to hand draw a brand new image. Instead, we were excited to use our own people to help turn a stock image into what was our vision for the district. So we gave it our own brand and identity with specific coloring that you're looking at right there, shading for various versions, and the incorporation of our district name. Similarly, our updated school mascot logos are in the process of rolling out at the schools. We worked with our web designers on these, and while some are close to the previous mascot designs, many are very fresh new adaptations that have been well received by our administrators. They just got to see them this week. So anyway, all of our new school mascots are spectacular, and our schools are in various places and sharing them out with great excitement. And my last comment is simply that we have a long meeting ahead of us. It's almost 7:30 already, but just today the cabinet was talking about how, yes, we have a long meeting, but we're really excited about this meeting because it is so deeply focused on teaching and learning, what we're all about. So we're pretty stoked about that. And that's it for the superintendent's report.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda, and just a gentle reminder that also included our personnel addendum.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Braden,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye. All right, next are our action items. These are all items that we have discussed in the past with the exception of the last one. So the first one is a motion to approve your a one-year contract with Arbor Food Services for fiscal year 2022-23.
So moved.
I'll second. Any discussion, questions?
I am curious, we talked about the styrofoam trays at the last meeting. Is there any follow-up with that, or do we know anything about whether we can reduce the use of the styrofoam trays?
So I did ask Arbor about that, and they will investigate as much as possible what they can get as a replacement, but they did say to me that they are suffering from supply chain issues about being able to get an item that does fulfill recyclable or recycled materials, but they will try their best to obtain those within the price parameters of the contract.
Okay, thank you. And we have plastic trays in some schools too, is that correct? Maybe not useful or usable.
Well, we did have them prior to the pandemic. So in returning to a post-pandemic lunch program and breakfast program, we will investigate being able to bring those back.
Great. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. And just kind of sparking off of the Student Environmental Council recommendation in terms of what would they have the board prioritize, their response was waste. So in terms of Arbor, and maybe not so much for this current agreement or maybe within this current renewal, I'd just like for us to explore maybe a focus group perhaps with some of our kids around food quality, because maybe we can get at root cause as to why so much is being wasted, because I don't think it's knowing food security issues in our community. I wonder if it's more quality and what can Arbor potentially do to work through that.
I can't talk on behalf of Arbor, but I will tell you that they will try and procure the best food that they can for the price available based on the supply chain and what they're able to procure for the price of the contract. Definitely, we should continue to examine student input and student voice in everything that we can. And we do have we should bring back a wellness committee probably as per board policy to get some input into that.
Mm-hmm. Good deal. Thank you.
Okay, roll call.
Weedman,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy. Oh, sorry, he's not here. Albert,
Aye.
Okay. Next is a motion to approve the security cameras at GMS.
So moved.
Second?
Any questions? Okay.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
Next is I need a motion to approve the new phone system for the district.
So moved. I'll second.
Any questions? Okay.
Albert,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye. And then we have a motion to approve the managed network systems.
So moved.
Second?
Any questions? Okay.
Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
Okay, and the next one is very long for me to read, so give me a second. Motion to approve a resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $6.595 million general obligation refunding school bonds series 2022 for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding bonds, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the proposed sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof. Now, this was, as you read through the memo, this was always been our plan to do so, but probably later on in the year, and has been recommended for us to do it a little earlier. And I see we have our resident expert here to answer any questions or fill us in. So if you want to go ahead.
Thanks so much. Who's turning the slides? Is somebody?
I can, or you can with it.
I can with this thing? Okay.
Top green.
Top green one, perfect. Okay. So as your board president, Jim, mentioned, it has been the plan to refund this portion of the bonds. We wanted to wait till August of '22 because then the issuance could be tax exempt versus taxable, because we had to wait till the call date. So, but in the meantime, interest rates are not waiting for us. They are going up dramatically, driven by the inflation and the Fed's efforts to tamp down inflation by increasing interest rates. The Fed has increased short-term interest rates already by 0.75% this year and plans to do another 50% in June. So as you can see, we got the building bonds, the limited bonds in February, just as rates started to go up, and now they're really accelerating. So, you know, kind of thinking about what we can do to lock in the rates on this refunding, we came up with the idea of doing what's called a forward refunding. So that graph we just saw was pretty dramatic. I thought I'd just show you this one as well. The dark line are, well, somehow this isn't showing up very well on the screen, but the top line is the average of interest rates from year 1 through 30 since 93, and the red line is where we are now. So I guess the good news is that rates are still low from a historical perspective. Okay, so the original plan, as we mentioned, was to issue the 9.1 million DSEB bonds for capital projects, which we did, and issue some taxable refunding bonds so that the tax rate wouldn't go up when we issued those new money bonds. So we did that part, and that was successful. The second part was issuing 6 million of the tax-exempt refunding bonds at the call date. And giving increasing rates, what we're suggesting is still closing in August, but working with some banks to lock in rates now. This is called a forward refunding. We're asking banks to make a commitment on interest rates on your bonds now for closing in August of 22. And this can be done through a private placement very effectively. For some reason, local banks are lagging behind the general markets in terms of the rate increases. So what we've got is a better playing field, more interest in your bonds. And so we got an indicative rate from a bank we work with often, Chase Bank, and they said they do give you a rate so that your all-in rate would be 3.14. This is as of May 9th, last week. If we went to the public markets, even with your strong AA+ rating, the rate would be 3.58%. The other thing to know, when you do this private placement, the cost of issuance are almost half as much as when you do a full public bond sale, when you go get a bond rating. The reason we can do a private placement on this is because it's a really short bond. It only goes out to 2029. So the banks are more interested in that type of amortization. So as you can see, based on this indicative rate from Chase, we've got a small amount of net present value savings, about $50,000. If we were to issue the bonds at today's rates in August, we'd be pretty much break even. So we're doing, just to revisit why we're doing this refunding, we're doing it not only to try to save some money on interest costs if we can, but we're doing it to flatten out the debt service tax rate. So here you see on page 9 the current situation. So the taxable refunding stabilized everything in the levy year 21, which people are going to be paying taxes on. But if we don't do this other refunding, we're going to have a drop in tax rate in 22 and then an increase in 23. So if we go to the next page, we see that this refunding gets rid of that drop. So it's very stable on the tax rate. The payments are very stable at $7.7 million and a tax rate of around 1.03. And then, of course, to remind you, in the year 2025, that's when all those referendum bonds are mostly paid off, and there will be a very large drop in the tax rate by 88 cents, estimated to be $680 on a $250,000 home. So that's when the big drop comes. So this deal, again, is to stabilize our debt levies so we don't have a dip and another increase in the coming years, and has always been part of the plan. And tonight you're looking at a resolution that authorizes us to move forward, and we want to do so with haste, just given the market. we would, if approved tonight, we would send a term sheet to potential bank bidders. So Chase is one of the banks. We'll survey all the other banks, State Bank of the Lakes, all your various local banks, as well as the bigger banks in Chicago that we know buy these types of deals. And then we'll get bids from them on May 28th. The parameters resolution authorizes the board president and the CSBO to make the final decision on, approving the bonds based on the lowest bidder on May 28th. We will lock in the rates at that point and then close in August. So that's how the forward works. We can lock in the rates now and close in August. Okay, any questions?
The only, I guess, more of a comment. Part of the reason why we're doing this is because the feds are looking at raising interest rates probably at least once, if not twice, between now and August, right? So this would
Yes,
dramatically affect the pricing of our bonds going out. So we're looking to be able to lock in what we have.
Yes.
Moving forward.
Yes, they've telegraphed that they're gonna raise rates 50 basis points in June again, and we expect almost every meeting time they meet, we'll see increases, depending on how the economy does and if inflation starts to calm down.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Go ahead. Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Hennessy, for this refresher, and it really helps to clarify why we would need to move the date up of the resolution. I just wanted to clarify in my understanding, when I'm on page 10, so you indicated that by moving sooner on this, right, this is really going to help us mitigate that fluctuation in the debt service tax rate and have a more stable, and it looks like through 2025, and then that's when you spoke to the 88 cents drop off. And so and maybe I'm a little ahead of myself, but I'm just curious as to the implications, recognizing that, before we blink, 2025 will be upon us.
Yes.
So just if you could help me understand the implications at that point in time, or if
Well,
there's anything that we need to kind of just be percolating around in our heads as it pertains to 2025.
Yes, so, 2025 is a large drop in the tax rate because the debt for the park and the schools that were built is, the majority of it is retired. So that's a great thing for the taxpayers. But, as a district, as you look at your needs and, you're right, 2025 is going to be here before we know it. As you look at your long-term forecasts, as you look at your operating needs, as your facility needs, this is also an opportunity, if you have additional needs, either from funding for operations or building, it's a great opportunity to ask the taxpayers again. If you can borrow money or if you can increase taxes to increase the number of staff, depending on enrollment, all those programs and things are opportunities. So it doesn't happen too often to have a drop in the tax rate of this magnitude. So, as you look at your forecast and you look at your needs, if you have something, pressing programmatically, educationally, see where we are at that point, that's a wonderful opportunity to ask the voters if they would be willing to reauthorize a portion of that or, whatever you feel you need at the time.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Miller? Aye. Nash?
Aye.
Albert?
Aye.
Braden?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye. Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Nice to see you all. Take care.
We have nothing under unfinished business. And next is new business. First one is the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2022-23, and that would be Mr. Wildman.
All right, thank you. The administration has been hard at work in building the new budget for the 2022-23 school year. This starts when we approved the tax levy in November, which was last year in 2021. We approved student fees in November and December, and we start work on enrollment projections, staffing plans, capital plans, curriculum resource plans, and technology plans. And within each of these plans, as you've seen, they include replacement schedules for Chromebooks, the district's vehicles, and our new curriculum resources. So lots and lots of planning has gone into the budget and beyond. Dr. Walk presented the administration's staffing plans in detail in March of 2022. Just a quick reminder that 58% of our budget is salary and benefits, meaning people. We are a people business. A further 14% is on outsourced services such as bus transportation, food service, and nighttime cleaning. So 73% of the total budget is human resource related. Alongside these plans, the business office meets with all the building and department leadership. Meetings are participatory that invite leaders to determine their wants and needs for the upcoming school year. As a placeholder, we have budgeted a 3% increase for all staff. This is not an indication or statement from the administration about the current state of negotiations. It is a number that I have to use as a placeholder, and 3% is what we have historically used in projections for unknown years. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. With all the major components in place in preliminary form, I am pleased to bring to you very close to a balanced budget. Last year, we presented a $1.3 million operating deficit. This year, we are close to a $100,000 deficit in the operating funds. If you include all the funds, and this includes capital projects and payments from debt service, we have a deficit of $2.3 million. But please remember that $1.9 million of that is spending from capital projects from the $9 million that we've just accumulated through the DSEB working cash funds. So in summary, I look forward to bringing the budget to you in June in tentative form, and then again in August to approve of the hearing. Do I have any questions about the preliminary budget?
Okay, thank you. And next is the purchase of kitchen equipment, which I have a feeling is also Mr. Wildman.
All right, the administration has identified new kitchen equipment to be purchased to support our breakfast and lunch program in this year's budget. This includes a new steamer for Frederick, a freezer for Park, and a freezer and a refrigerator for Prairie View. The district is a member of Sourcewell, a cooperative purchasing agreement that we are part of, and so we're able to obtain this without going out to full bidding. The pricing that we've received through this is $45,545.56. I can't, it's a lot of fives in there. I misstepped. And it is available to be purchased through Trimark, which is a very good vendor that a lot of school districts use in purchasing this equipment. So we're very pleased to be using Sourcewell. We're very pleased to be getting best pricing. We're very pleased to be getting this culinary equipment to be hopefully purchased and ready for the new school year.
Go ahead, Tamika.
Just racking them up tonight. Again, kind of going back to our Student Environmental Council, that was just so awesome. Going back to some of the key takeaways, I think one of the issues around the trays were that not all of our facilities, I think 5 buildings, did not have dishwashers. Can we lean on our good relationship to get a desirable potential quote since we're upskilling our kitchen equipment?
So how it works is the equipment is our equipment that we actually buy it. We can buy it directly through them, but it's still as we would buy it. So if we do wish to do that, we would have to increase the budget for that next year. We've not budgeted for that based on the kind of constraints of the kitchens that we currently have. Okay. So if we do wish to do that, we'd probably have to do a needs assessment to kind of figure out what we could actually fit in terms of the equipment. Because we're going out to bid, in November for the new school year, we could look at that. But with going into the 6th year of a 5-year contract, I know that doesn't make sense, and I've already explained it. It doesn't make sense, I know. We should look at that going forward.
Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, just off the top of your head, and maybe this might be better for next meeting too, but I'm curious if these appliances are Energy Star appliances. Can we expect energy efficiencies? Just off the, I know that's a granular question.
I wish Adam was here. He would be able to answer that, I think, because he actually worked directly with ABBA. I will find out for you.
Anybody else have any questions? Jessica?
This may be a silly question, but these are very huge appliances, right? I mean, they're not your average fridge or...
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's all the questions. Next will be the K through 8 literary resources, and I believe that it will be Dr. Lewis and his gang of merry people.
Well, good evening, everyone. I brought a crew with me today, and so I'm going to introduce the friends who are here to share this information. So Amanda Woodruff, who is our curriculum coordinator, and Katie O'Brien, who is our teacher on special assignment, and Kai Mashopoulos, who is one of our instructional coaches. She works at Avon, and then Amy Gluck, who's our incoming assistant superintendent, who has been involved in this process. And we wanted her to be here, and she was able to be here today to show that we're having the transition, so that she's been involved in all this. I will say, and I'm going to speak for the crew at the moment, we are so excited to be here. This has been a labor of love, and it has been very, very important. And so this has been hard work, but we are thrilled that we're here today to share our recommendations for new K-8 literacy materials. As always, we start with our mission of empowering learners, creating equity, and cultivating community, which is important. You'll hear these words in some of the information about our new resources. So it was part of our discussion almost at every meeting as we talked through about these topics. So I wanted to connect, as always, we wanted to go back to our strategic plan. And so one of the curriculum goals was curriculum goal number 1, and it was to review and update teaching, learning, and assessment practices and materials through an equity lens to create culturally responsive learning environments. And that really was that was the heart of what we were looking for. We wanted to make sure we were honoring that work from this community strategic plan and our district goal. And so that's been really an important component. Also, we always want to make sure that we're looking at finance goal number 3. That's an important component of our school district to make sure that we have a way to fund what we're looking for. And then I also put in board policy 6:40. That's all about curriculum adoption materials. And so we're following board policy in how we're proceeding with all of this information. I'm turning it over already to one of my colleagues, but I'll be back.
So the last time we adopted a new literacy resource was 2007. So we really wanted to make sure that we were very thorough in our process. We started in the fall and sought volunteers from staff, but due to sub shortages, we were unable to progress with our work at that time. When you review the members of the PDT, you will see that we had representatives from every school, every grade level in the district. We also had representatives from various groups, including classroom teachers, EL teachers, reading specialists, instructional coaches, and administrators. We really want to thank everyone for their time, commitment, and dedication to this process. Without them, this work would not have been possible.
And I already forgot that I wanted to thank some of the PDT members who are actually here in the audience. So Mrs. Julian is here, and Ms. Godstein is here, and Dr. Diaz, who sits at the table, was also part of that group, along with that full list.
Yes. We wanted to move forward with our plans for literacy, but did have to think differently about our time. We determined that we would start with a smaller group of staff, mostly reading specialists and instructional coaches who did not need subs, and work reviewing current literacy research, including the science of reading, and to begin to draft a literacy vision and literacy plan. When you review our vision statement, it really reflects how we want to empower learners within all of the domains of literacy. And when you review our literacy plan, the intent behind that is to use it as a framework for teaching and learning literacy. It also gives families a window into what literacy should look like in Community Consolidated School District 46. You all have a copy of this plan at your place. It will also be posted to our district website for families and communities to be able to see. With our time in the small group, we also crafted a plan for getting input from all staff that teach literacy. We used one of our professional development days to conduct focus groups and administer surveys to staff specifically about the future of literacy instruction. Once that behind-the-scenes work was completed, we assembled our full PDT using work time after school hours, or if the meetings were scheduled during the school day, we worked to ensure minimal subs were needed. From there, the full PDT finalized the literacy vision and literacy plan, reviewed feedback from staff, and developed a program review rubric. Initially, there was a review of 14 different programs. However, based on the literacy vision and plan, along with data gathered from the PDT, focus groups, and surveys, we moved forward with presentations from 8 different programs. After that, based on the program review rubric, 4 programs were chosen for more in-depth presentations. During this time, reference calls were made to other districts currently using the program. And after the final 4 presentations, the PDT made a final recommendation for kindergarten through 5th grade and 6th through 8th grade. Those recommendations being Scholastic Literacy for K-5 and Savas My Perspectives for 6-8.
So I just want to echo what Ms. Woodruff said. I want to celebrate our PDT members. They really did an excellent job. They worked very hard. Not only were they looking at their grade level materials, but how it would affect the district as a whole. So I want to celebrate them for giving their time for this. Moving in this process, we knew there were going to be things that we were going to learn, and we knew things already. One of those was that we were not really focusing on bilingual materials because the Spanish language arts standards were still in the process of being adopted. They have now, but the state has very specific guidelines for the programs that are allowed for bilingual programming, so they were not a part of this process. We knew that ongoing professional development is going to be an integral part of being able to support a new literacy program. It's going to be very important that teachers are given the professional development that they need to ensure that we're able to pull this off. Additionally, it was an understanding that any program adopted was going to be used with fidelity, especially the first year, to make sure that we're giving it all and that it will be used for the majority of instruction. One big lesson I think that we learned is there's definitely not a perfect program out there, and we were going to have to supplement in some way, whether it was on the phonics end or it was with novels. We had to make a decision going forward what would be the best program for us and where we were going to have to supplement. In addition, we also learned that we have to go slow to go fast. It's going to be very important that we take the time to learn this program, to do it justice, to make sure that we're giving the best learning opportunity for students using this new program. Like Ms. Woodruff said, the K-5 PDT chose Scholastic Literacy, and the K-8 chose Savas My Perspectives. And those choices were made by looking back at what we decided as a district through our PDT was going to be important for our literacy instruction for our students and what that should look like in the classroom, and those 2 programs fit the bill.
Kai, that might have been a slip because you just said K-8 chose My Perspective.
Oh, sorry, 6-8. You guys knew what I meant, you saw it. Okay. $1.1 million was allocated for this by you, thank you, for new literacy materials. Any carryover from that, and we'll find out what that is in a bit, will be used to, like I said, supplement where we need to supplement. There's not a perfect program, and also professional development for staff. When that money is gone, then district funds and other funds will be used to provide those opportunities. So here you're going to see some statements that were made when we were going through the very last part of what program are we going to choose. We were between two. They both were very good, one focused in one way and one focused in the other. And we really needed to look back at our literacy plan and figure out what is important to us as a district, when we sat down and made that plan, what were we thinking? We want to make sure that we are providing students with learning opportunities to have access to engaging, authentic text. We found a program that did that. We wanted to make sure that we are creating thoughtful readers that can engage with text, to make meaning out of it, to make connection with it. Again, we look back at our literacy plan. What kind of teachers do we want to have in our district? We want those that are invigorated, they're excited, and we want a program that's going to help these teachers move the literacy instruction where we would like it to be. And that's why we chose that program. Savas Literacy comes with a plethora of program components, a lot of program components, and many that we'll have to figure out how we're going to use. But one of those is for whole class. So for whole class instruction, their teachers will have access to authentic interactive read-alouds. They offer shared reading resources. Kindergarten and first grade get big books, which they were very excited about. They do have writing workshop materials. Some of them were very good and we could use them, but we still will focus on our Thinking Maps writing like we have been. And they also offer for teachers different classroom resources they can use, such as flip charts, strategy posters, and anchor charts. They also have a lot of program components that help to implement a program like this. There's implementation guides. There are teacher resources such as teaching editions and things that we know are going to come with a program, but something that was really cool and interesting was that this program offered a 3-week startup. So a 3-week plan for every grade level that helps teachers learn how to set up a literacy classroom. And for a new teacher or a veteran teacher, to me, that's gold. It also has a digital hub that offers 2,500 plus additional text on top of everything else that we're getting that teachers have at their disposal. One of the biggest components, I think, and the biggest sellers for this program was the book room. So every building is going to get a leveled book room. This helps to create more equity in our district because right now, not every building has the same resources to use with students. So this leveled book room that will be in every building will have, every teacher in the district will have the opportunity to use the same resources with students. It creates equity and it provides many more opportunities for teachers to work with students with targeted learning materials that meet their needs. They also will have guided reading materials, which will support small group instruction, differentiated small group instruction during guided reading. And a huge component and a big seller of this program as well are the online components. So there's 3 online components that come with Scholastic Literacy. One is called FIRST. It's for grades K through 2. It really focuses on phonics and foundational skills. Vocabulary and knowledge development are worked through the program called WORD, and that is for K-5. And then there's the Independent Reading Management program, which is called Literacy Pro. That's for grades K-6. One of the coolest things about these programs, it collects data for teachers, and it helps them to group their students based on skill, based on reading ability, reading level, and they can go down to that book room and they can get the materials that they need to work with their students. So the programs collect the data and help them to guide and inform their own instruction.
The Scholastic Literacy Curriculum spirals, which means it revisits the same basic topics at each grade, exploring concepts at an increasingly higher level of difficulty and in greater depth. Each theme-based unit of study is framed around a unifying topic, theme, or genre, and an essential question. Many different professional development opportunities will be provided to help staff implement this new literacy resource. Building administrators will receive training this summer. Staff will also have the opportunity to receive 2 to 3 days of training before school starts. During the school year, monthly staff meeting time will be devoted to this implementation. Instructional coaches and reading specialists will provide additional support. Pre-recorded webinars will be available at any time. And finally, our partnership with the Regional Office of Education will allow their staff to support teachers as well. The total cost for scholastic literacy is $779,751. This covers 6 years of student books and teacher materials, digital access for students and teachers, a building guided reading book room, which includes professional books for teachers, assessment tools, and ongoing professional development. As mentioned earlier, our new 6-8 resource is Savvis, My Perspectives. PDT members were also very impressed with this program because of its diverse literature and balance between hard copy digital resources and digital resources, its culturally relevant texts and practices, integrated reading, writing, speaking, and listening experiences, and commitment to student voice and choice. The Savvis My Perspectives program includes student and teacher editions, as well as a digital hub for both students and staff. And these 6-8 resources look different than the K-5 resources because there are not as many extra things at these grade levels. This is also why the cost of this program is significantly less. Similarly to Scholastic, 6-8 staff will have ongoing professional development to support this implementation. Virtual training opportunities will be offered before school starts. Monthly staff meeting time will be devoted to this implementation. Instructional coaches and reading specialists will provide support. Pre-recorded webinars will be available at any time, and the ROE staff will also be able to support teachers. The total cost for Savvis My Perspectives is $226,996. This includes 6 years of student books and teacher materials, digital access for students and teachers, assessment tools, and ongoing professional development.
So as was mentioned, while both the Scholastic program and the Savvis program have many components, there are some things that are not included. And so in those programs, some things that we may need to supplement are some potential phonics materials for K2. So thinking about things like decodable books, hands-on manipulatives in order to help students to work through learning sounds, and then also some possible potential novel purchases at the upper grades in order to help our students have some additional materials. We'll also need to look at how we can have some management and organizational tools for that guided reading book room in order to look at how are we going to check out books and make sure that all the books are where they should be when they should be there. You've already heard the cost of each program. When we are looking at that, the grand total is $1,006,598. That is coming from the ESSER funds where we had $1.1 million. So when we're looking at that, there are some remaining funds that will be able to help us to purchase those materials that are not included. So next steps, what are we looking at moving forward? So when we look at that, the materials that are sitting right here right now will be moved into district office and they will be set up for public review. If anyone would like to make an appointment for public review, they can do so with Amanda. June 1st, we will come back to request board approval for this purchase. And then in June, there will be many things happening as we're moving into the summer. So when we think about that work, that we will have a summer team of teachers working together to really look at some of those curricular connections. Specifically, thinking maps is one of those things that we need to look at. How are we going to make connections to things that we're already using and where does it fit? How are we going to dispose of our old materials? So are we going to gift them, recycle, donate, looking at what we're going to do with old materials as we move new materials in? As was already mentioned, we're going to have some professional development for our leadership team. And then upon approval, after June 1st, then we will work forward to submit purchase orders and make a plan for where the materials are going to go when they get delivered, which is super exciting. And then we'll continue working on how are we going to supplement any materials that need to be supplemented. In July and August, then we'll continue to move forward with some of those professional development plans that need to happen. So it is now time for us to turn it over to you. What questions and comments do you have for us?
I actually have a couple. First off, thanks for all your work, for all the staff for putting in the hard work to come up with something that'll work for our district. What is the typical lifespan of a curriculum? I see we've used this last one for 15 years. I can only imagine the patchwork it has in between those timeframes.
Yes, we are certainly hoping not to break that record. We would like to have it lower than that number. So the 6 years was a really key point for us to get to because there was a point where it became much more financially acceptable. It was a good thing if we went to 6 years because of the cost evened out a little bit. I would assume and expect that some of the materials, like the guided reading materials in the book room, there's a full-size poster over there. Those are going to have some wear and tear, but we'll be able to purchase individual ones for replacement. So those are going to be around for a long time as far as I'm concerned. The consumable materials, each of the grade levels have books like this in K-5, and there are 6 of these per school year. And so this is part of the materials that we would be getting. And then this is an example of the 6-8 consumable materials that we would be getting for 6 years. So really, we know that we're going to be getting the resources for 6 years. It is always a consideration to consider to extend it beyond that as well, or we may be looking for something else. But we think that 6 years is a really good opportunity. That's very typically part of a curriculum review cycle, that about 5 to 7 years is when we should be really looking at new materials anyway.
Okay. So I know you talked about a 3-week rollout for professional development for staff. When do you think that is going to start, and how, is that like at the very beginning of the school year, or is that going to be something that happens over the summer?
So Kai was talking about our 3-week intro unit. And so our 3-week intro unit is actually built into the program, and so it's helping students and teachers know how a guided reading group should work, and we're going to be modeling how we talk to each other, how we talk about a book, what are things that we look for and pay attention to. So it's specific lessons that teachers will be doing. It's also the time that we'll be assessing students with a benchmarking tool so that we have real data. We'll be showing students how to get into all those digital programs that Kai went into. So instead of jumping right into the first unit, we're going to give ourselves a little bit of grace, and they do recommend it, to have a 3-week unit. It's also when we have map testing. It's also when we're building culture in the classroom. We're working on our engagement structures. We're introducing the thinking maps at the beginning of the year. So we're actually giving our staff some breathing room instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I have to get going right away with the first unit. They're still going to be doing reading. They're still going to be doing writing. It's just going to feel a little bit different to get the unit started. You also shared that it was about PD, so we'll have some PD over the summer for our teachers, and then they'll have the digital experiences as well if they need a refresher on how to do the assessments. Our instructional coaches, our reading specialists will be there. We've created an implementation team across the district, and so we've identified specific people to be the kindergarten focused teachers across the district. We have a group for first grade, we have a group for second grade. We have that all the way through 8th grade, actually. And so they're going to be the ones who also can lead out some support or to take in questions. So we've been thinking pretty globally about all of these issues, about how we can help teachers, how we'll get students addressed into the program. And we're actually at this very moment considering doing some kind of that intro unit with the 6-8 students as well, even though it's not part of the program. We think that we want to do something similar to that as well, because we think that's really a a powerful way to get students and teachers into the resources. So it's not assumed that they know how to do all those things. We know that during the pandemic and the return from the pandemic has changed some of our student behaviors, and we're going to try to really work closely on that. I hope I've answered questions for that. Did I?
Okay.
I got a thumbs up over
All
there.
right,
So
I got one more. And so if you were to pick two items or two parts of the curriculum itself, not the resources that you're going to be using, how much different is it from the last version?
our last resource that we've had?
No, so, hey, I'm saying this wrong. So, pick a title in the curriculum for the literacy, right? And how much different is that over what it was in the past?
One of the things is really important to me, and I'll let somebody else answer too, but it's all about authentic text. So we're really looking at texts that have different kind of characters in them, so ethnicities are being represented. The authors that we're presenting in the books are from multiple nationalities and from different countries, all those kind of things. So we love that idea that we're broadening and experiencing, and we, in our goal was a culturally responsive environment. And so we do think that those materials will be significantly better and different, and our students will see themselves in the books, will see themselves in the writing. Would one of you like to add something? Kai has something.
The old program that we had was Treasures. It's very much a basal scripted reader. The Scholastic Literacy, it sets up a way that you can run your classroom, but it still gives the teachers choice on which text they want to use with their students and how they're going to do that. So a basal reader doesn't always offer those authentic learning opportunities for students, and the one that we chose did.
Okay, thank you.
And I can say the same thing for the upper grade program as well. We were talking specifically about Scholastic, but My Perspectives has a wide variety of important text. I'm looking at, Laura is nodding, very agreeable in the back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Is it on? Yeah. Thank you for that presentation. I love the excitement in presenting new materials. I know when I get new materials in my classroom, it's like buying a new car. So it's a wonderful thing. I'm interested in the supplemental materials too. I'm just wondering, is it something that you are approaching with, do you have to approach it with the same level of investigation that you did for choosing these materials? Do you have something in the pipeline already for those intermediate moments?
So I can speak to directly of some of those things. While the program, I'm going to use phonics as the example. While the program has a basis and a good program, the program in Scholastic is actually written by Wiley Blevins, who was the author of a program of a book that we've been using all this year, From Phonics to Reading, that we came a year ago to get in, and so it's the same author, so we were comfortable with that. But we do know that our kindergarten and first grade teachers in particular, second grade too, really have understood the science of reading and the whole concept that we need to have a lot of decodable books. So we feel like we need more of decodable books. So decodable books, really, we're just going to be looking at a good source that's going to provide appropriate decodable books. What I mean that is it might be books about short O or a book about a long A. And so we don't want books just to be nonsense. Many of the earlier decodable books were just a whole bunch of words that they put together on the page, but there wasn't really a story. The new books that come out about decodable books with that feature are definitely a story, and so we can build story and the concept of phonics. But then also for phonics, we know that students will be working in small groups. So sometimes they might be using some of the digital tools that Kai talked about, called FIRST or Word, but we also know that kids need to do. They need to be doing some things. So we're looking at the moment for some additional, I'd call them manipulatives. You've probably heard that in math, but we use manipulatives in all subjects. So they might be letter cards, they might be Elkonin boxes, that's just a fancy term for being able to put letters together. They might be reading rods, which are cubes that you put together and you're able to make words out of them. So I think we just need some consistent materials for the teachers. So when you asked, are we going to be doing the same level? We've been already working with our reading specialists and our primary teachers to say what could be helpful. And so we've already created a list. We've been looking at some sources, but this was the big event. And then those are things that we can supplement and get for teachers. Am I answering your question?
I have a couple questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Did
go
you
ahead.
say and?
He was done.
I'm done.
Okay. So nice job, great presentation, and like my colleague, got to appreciate the excitement. So a few questions. One, it was noted that this is being paid for through the ESSER funds, and I just want to make sure I'm clear that we expect the shelf life to be somewhere between 5 to 7 years, and then after that, the district will pick up.
We know we'll
the
have it for
expenses.
6.
For 6.
Because we're paying for a 6-year subscription. I was just saying in a typical curriculum review, it's usually between 5 and 7.
All right, so we should anticipate come year 6, so 2028, that we will be incurring costs. Because I'm looking at our CSBO, we're not going to have extra funds for that, maybe. Okay, so that was point one I wanted to just clarify.
Tamika, I just wanted to speak to that for a moment. Thank you for pointing that out, and I simply wanted to comment that this is a reoccurring theme, really, throughout our school district over the last couple of years, that we are talking about how we plan for refreshment, right? We plan for refreshing our Chromebooks. We've been talking about how we plan to replace trucks. And obviously, curriculum is a big piece of that, and that will be a continuing conversation so that we won't wake up one day and say, you know, it feels like this stuff is old and we got to do something about it. We will plan for it.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Glickman.
Sure.
Next, in terms of the supplemental materials, so just to build on what Dr. Mack was asking, I guess maybe a little bit more granular for me is where are we looking to get these materials from, and not necessarily sourced by provider, but I'm thinking of, are there any other partnerships that we can potentially lean on? I'm thinking the D46 Foundation, I'm thinking partnership with library. Just, is there anything like that that's being thought about as we plan for how do we get these supplemental materials?
We hadn't thought about that yet. Okay. So we do know, and one of my beliefs is if we are hoping and expecting teachers to use the materials, then the district needs to really provide those for us. And so at least for the base or the core, that needs to be part of our adoption. But if there's ways that we can eventually supplement or go above and beyond, those would be great ways for us to consider with the foundation. We are looking at some of the materials from local companies. We have a really amazing company very close to us called Hand to Mind. They're in Vernon Hills, and so they've been providing us some samples for us to look at. They also want to be very competitive in their pricing, and so they are a local company, which I know is something we've talked about as a board to hopefully buy local, and they have promised to match or beat anything from Amazon or any of the other places. So I'm excited to have that because we know the level of service is also very high. So that was
helpful.
Taking a tangent there a little bit.
That was helpful. The other question I had was non-bilingual wasn't in scope because at the time the state standards hadn't been come out, but it sounds like they are established now.
So do you want to take that? Do you want me to?
So yes, the standards have been published and they're fine. They're needing to be implemented by October. And so what we will be doing as an EL bilingual group is kind of looking at the crosswalk of what do we have already in place and what do the new standards have, and if we need to look for something else, then we would start a similar process that the PDT had just gone through. Or are our materials okay and do they meet what we need? So.
Okay, around October.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then last question, I promise. Thank you, Dr. Diaz. So I know that we partner with Scholastic or rather, Scholastic has been a book fair partner of the district for a long time. curious if we are just fiscally thinking, are we getting any type of rebates, offsets, any type of additional incentives since we've been a longstanding partner with them in that regard?
They've given us quite a bit of a discount. They've really worked very closely, and they're adding in some additional PD and a variety of things. We also, I'm just going to make sure we're fully transparent about it, we also use the Scholastic Lit Camp program as part of our summer school program, and that was one of the reasons why we wanted to look at the full program, because it has been so successful at summer school. So we've had experience with the program. Dr. Diaz, I'm seeing you're nodding, because we've used it as for multiple of the programs, but they are being very, very, they're working very closely with us.
Sure.
To help us with that.
Thank you.
Kristen Miller?
I'm going to piggyback on that. So with community engagement, a lot of our PTOs run book fairs, so with Scholastic. So I'm wondering if there is any link in between these literacy materials and then the book fairs that our committee should be aware of.
There may be titles that the students will see in the book fairs. The Scholastic Book Fair Company is a division of Scholastic Literacy, and the educational materials are a different, but some of the materials do cross over. Okay. But I can certainly ask for more connections. I think the students will be excited when they say, oh, I know that book, or I know that book, or I've seen that author before. I remember in the meeting, one of the authors that they used is a book that you actually were fully aware of, and it's a full series. And so they might be some books that the kids would find at the book fair related to the story that's part of the program.
Right, that's what I was wondering.
And that is part of a good reader, and so that really helps a student improve their reading if they get hooked into a series,
Yep.
And then hopefully move on from the series and not stay there too long. That's part of it too.
Thank you. I have two more questions. Just the teacher in me is very cognizant that teachers spend a lot of time developing their curriculum and hone it. It sounds to me like there's flexibility for the teachers to use what they've found to be tried and true lessons. Will this program provide flexibility that they can retain what has worked really well? Or do they have to kind of start
Katie,
over?
do you want to approach that a little bit?
Yeah, this program will definitely give teachers the flexibility to still use texts that they've used before to teach particular standards, but it also will recommend texts too. And I think even part of the digital component, they could go in and, this is the standard that I'm teaching, and it will recommend other books that they can use that are in the book room.
So it doesn't eliminate their prior work, it just builds on it?
Yes.
Perfect.
But I heard, I think it was Kai, talk about the importance of implementing the program with fidelity, right? And that particularly in the first year, when we're adopting something, we really try to hold very close to what's being presented in the text.
Right. So, for example, many of the things that we've talked about that could be used is when kids go to centers and they've already had created centers for nouns or pronouns or adverbs or adjectives, and they've had fun things for the kids to do. It doesn't mean those can't be used, but they would be following the scope of what the program is talking about to instruct at that time. Also, for guided reading, we are not getting rid of every guided reading book that we have in our schools either, because we know we need a lot of them. We know we need to have different topics, and so those books are also going to say. So when I talked about those that's what I was referring to, and I think that's what Lynn was sharing as well too, that we're putting together a structure. Just last Friday, we put together a whole year scope and sequence about what units are being done at what time and what the focus is. And the real interesting part, that one slide that Katie showed with all the themes across the year, I absolutely love that the entire school will be focusing on the same theme at the same time. And so they can do some cross-grade level conversations, or discussions between grade levels can happen. So those kind of things I think are going to be really valuable. So if there's the connections, we want to throw in those connections as well.
Thank you. And then I have one more question, and Mr. Vipond, actually, you might, I am not expecting an answer tonight, but this is actually a question more for you related to the digital elements of the program. So I've got your videos fresh in my mind, was just watching them right before, and I'm wondering if the data that's collected about students, how that will be protected, how it will be used, and specifically, I'm sorry, and then also, are there any insurance implications? You said it's best practice for dual verification systems, so I didn't know if there were insurance. And again, I'm not asking for an answer right now if you don't have it at the top of your head, just for discussion would be great.
Let's do it. So I am thrilled to say that all of our SOPA requirements, the biggest Student Privacy Protection Act that we've been working on for almost 2 years now, Amanda has been very closely working on all of that for our district. And so I am confident that that is something that we have already looked at, making sure that Scholastic, in fact, I know that Scholastic already has a SOPA agreement on file with us, so as well as the other one. So the student privacy concerns, because we have used these resources or these companies already, is not a new concern, and we're already protected there. And then we talked about two-factor authentication, and that we continue to protect our student data through all of the systems that we have set up through our SOPA agreements.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Christy Braden.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to geek out with the literacy plan. Very excited. And I'm serious about that. I love it. My question is kind of related to something really important that one of you said at the very beginning, which is year one implementation. Implementing with fidelity, absolutely, and knowing that year one implementation may look different than future year implementation. And I really appreciate that. I feel like it's a big change and a big lift, so I'm so glad that you're thinking about it in that way. And not expecting everyone to get it perfect in day one. And it sounds like, even those original, the sort of ramp up plans are there as well. My question is around feedback loops and your thoughts and, high level. I'm sure you'll have more detailed plans later in the summer, but for collecting feedback and using feedback to make the process better for everyone.
Right, so that's kind of the reason that, it is the reason that we have an implementation team. And so to have those designated people at every grade level to be the go-tos, while Amy and Amanda, I was going to say I'll be available. Amy and Amanda will be able to take that feedback. But it's good to have a teacher team that's on the ground, involved all the time to take notes. Our Java-like structure will continue. We'll have identified people at every grade. While they might not be meeting as often as we may have in the past, we may be looking at that a little bit different, we will have direct contact. And so we've already talked about having a way for teachers after the unit is done to write down notes or to have a discussion or to give feedback for those things. And so that is part of our process that we've been talking through. And you brought up the literacy plan. I have to give a shout out to Leslie McLeod Armstrong. We had a very big document created, but it was just text. And so she worked her magic and added the pictures and the spacing, and wow, is all I could say. So she made it look, I think we were a little bit concerned after we saw the tech plan that came to all of you, and he's smiling over there, that we had to at least bring it up a little bit.
Healthy competition.
Yes, for sure.
Awesome. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Jessica, you have anything?
No, just thank you. Oh, my questions that I had were already answered. Thanks to all of you.
I have one final thank you as well. I think, did all the board members get a chance to speak? Okay. I just wanted to comment that this project was such a beautiful bridge between our current Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning and our future Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning. And Paul, you approached this final gigantic project as though you were going to be here to see it through. And I think your team all knows that. with an incredible level of energy and excitement. And then you were consistent about inviting Amy in, so generous about that. And then Amy, you were so generous about your time because you have a whole other job right now where you're doing the same stuff that Paul is doing, trying to transition someone else. So thank you. And then, of course, we have Amanda kind of pulling everybody together. So I just really want to thank you all for this collaboration. Thank you so much.
So as the last slide said, we will be bringing this back at the next meeting, requesting approval of the plan.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
thank you. And next we have the 6-8 health resources.
I'm back. All right, so good evening, everyone. We are here tonight to share a little bit about the future of 6th through 8th grade health class in Community Consolidated School District 46. Before we begin, I just want to focus our time together on the district mission. And really tonight, we're going to be focusing on that empowering learners piece of our mission. Our recommendation tonight aligns to the following strategic plan goals. Curriculum Goal 1, to review and update teaching, learning, and assessment practices through an equity lens and to create culturally responsive learning environments. Finance Goal 3, to be transparent with our financial practices. And it also aligns to the following board policies. Board Policy 640, all about curriculum development and adoption. Board Policy 715, about student and family privacy rights. And Board Policy 260, about any curriculum objections. So why now? Why are we looking at health resources specifically for 6-8 health? Well, in August of 2021, Governor Pritzker signed the Keeping Youth Safe and Healthy Act. Implementation of this bill is required and calls for updated health curriculum for health and safety education for grades K through 5, and updated health curriculum including comprehensive sexual health education for grades 6 through 8. Our plan for that is to work with PE staff next year on the K-5 health plan and publish an updated scope and sequence as soon as that work is complete. Our plan for 6-8 is to work through the summer and publish our updated scope and sequence as soon as that work is complete as well. Our current scope and sequence documents can currently be found on the district website. And again, I just want to share that implementation of this bill is required. So the plan for initial financing of this recommendation comes from SRARP, which includes an allocation for new curriculum materials and related costs. The initial one-year cost of our proposal is $26,327. Any future professional development can come from our Title II grant, which is the federal grant that gives us money specifically for professional development and improvement of staff, as well as the curriculum budget. And then any future renewals or supplements will also be covered by the curriculum budget. So the last time we adopted a health resource for 6-8 health was 2008. Knowing that, we wanted to ensure that all of our 6-8 health teachers were involved in this process. There's 5 of them. So we utilized late start times and reviewed our current practices and resources, the current state standards and mandates. We also took some time to talk to neighboring school districts to see what materials they were utilizing. From there, 3 programs were selected for formal presentations to the group. Those included McGraw-Hill Teen Health, Goodhart-Wilcox Comprehensive Health Skills for Middle School, and ETR Health Smart. I would also like to share that the number of resources specifically designed for a K-8 health class, or even more specifically a 6-8 health class, are very limited. So after all of these programs had a chance to do a formal presentation and the materials reviewed by our health staff, it was determined that ETR Health Smart would be our final recommendation.
So a little bit more about ETR. Here's their mission: improve health and increase opportunities for youth, family, and communities. It's really a focus of empowering learners and creating equity is the big idea there. And the ETR values as a company, those are, there's so many connections in here to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And especially the last one, I just wanted to highlight enthusiasm for what lies ahead. We focus forward, not rest on the body of our current work. And so I really loved that concept as one of their values as a company. So Health Smart is really is the program that we're looking for, looking to adopt. It is about 6 main areas from the CDC, and those are general first aid and teen dating violence, pregnancy and STDs, including HIV, tobacco use, alcohol and other drug use, a healthy diet, and physical activity and healthy lifestyles. So really those are the main big ideas of the Health Smart program. It's important to note that Health Start aligns with the National Health Education Standards, it aligns with the National Sex Education Standards, and the Illinois Standards for Social Emotional Learning and Health Education. And then we are expecting a very strong alignment to the Illinois State Standards, because the law says it needs to follow the National Health Education Standards as well. So those are important connections. We're looking at all of these different modules. And so nutrition, physical activity, tobacco, alcohol, and other drug prevention. You'll see that there are a number of them. This program actually is 6 workbooks for 3 grades. I think Amanda's going to show. So we have 6 different workbooks that we'll be using across 3 grades. And so we're going to be paying really close attention to what's age appropriate for 6th grade, what's age appropriate for 7th grade, what's age appropriate for 8th grade as we look through those manuals. So those manuals are meant to use over 3 years. I'm hoping that makes sense. One of the important things that we want to make sure that we're addressing is that health and sex education is one of the topics that's listed in school code that parents have an option to opt out if they choose to do that. The good thing, we would be able to physically show all the materials and for consistency, so parents would be able to see what materials that all teachers would be using. And we know that there are a number of topics that parents have the right to opt out of: comprehensive sex education, HIV, AIDS, and sexually transmitted diseases, Aaron's Law, instruction on organ tissue and blood donor and transplantation programs, animal dissection, and family life class. And so the important thing is that, as I said, families and parents, guardians have the right to inspect all the materials ahead of time. Having a consistent program being used across the whole school district really makes the most sense in our minds.
All right, so pending the approval of the new resource, the materials will be available for public review until June 1st. Anybody wishing to review these materials can contact me to make an appointment. We will also be working with our health staff to update and align our 6-8 scope and sequence with the specific lessons from Health Smart. It is important, again, to note that the health teachers will be working through each of those content units, determining what modules and lessons are appropriate for each grade level. And it's also important to know that not all lessons will be used and not all grade levels will get every lesson. I hope that makes sense. We will also have professional development on Health Smart for our health teachers. We will plan our implementation for the upcoming school year, and then always collect and review data from our staff and have that continuous feedback from them. So now I just ask, what questions and comments do you have?
I actually wanted to just go back for a moment.
Yes, please.
It's not really a question or comment, but Amanda, you were just talking about, and both of you did actually, that teachers will be working together to identify what units and lessons will be used at different grade levels. And the reason I bring that up is that we were referring to 6 workbooks, but if I'm remembering our conversations correctly, we're not really planning to use them as student workbooks. Instead, and please tell me if I have it wrong, we'll be really giving the teachers electronic access to the materials.
Correct.
So that they can pull the lessons and provide them. And one of the benefits of that is that kids aren't going to be having their own workbook to then rifle through and preview materials without context, right?
Correct.
This way they'll have the materials at the right time when the teacher is ready to teach that lesson.
That is correct,
Okay.
yes. We will have some physical copies for the teacher to pull out when and if needed, but mostly the access will be digital.
Okay, anybody have any questions? No?
I did also want to point out, I gave you a one-year cost. It did not benefit the district in any way to have a multiple-year contract, like the literacy, where there's a 6-year. With literacy, after 2 years, the materials for all 6 years are pretty much paid for. With this particular resource, we had no financial benefit for going for a 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 6-year contract. So this would just be a yearly cost that we would incur this first time in the ESSER ARP grant, and then in future years from the curriculum budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Situational Awareness Program, Alice. And this one, Dr. Lewis isn't going to talk at.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure that I am here as a team with three of us, members of the Safety and Security Committee, to be able to present to you a recommendation for situational awareness, active shooter methodology, which we've selected and recommended to you this evening. Again, I feel like I'm stealing all the slides that we've already talked about. Empowering learners, creating equity, and cultivating community. One of the things that we really wanted to stress here is the empowerment, which is a large part of situational awareness and active shooter methodologies. So we're guided and governed by board policies, as we've talked about. This is a slide that we've reprised from the May 4th presentation to you, which we give you an update on all the safety and security initiatives that we've done since we were inaugurated, which we started in December. So we have the safety board policy, which is 4:170, and as it states that governs all safety and security. It also governs our school safety drill plan, which is building specific, and the annual review that we have with our government partners. And then we have the targeted school violence program, which is board policy 4190, which is the threat assessment teams, which you heard about 2 weeks ago. So why are we here? So active shooter response methods reviewed. So here we met as a committee back in December, and we met in March, and then we met in April. And all of those meetings, we discussed the traditional lockdown with all the members, including police. And one of the things that came up very often was it not being best practice that we were currently doing a traditional lockdown. So what is a traditional lockdown? It's when we close the doors, turn the lights off, kids hide in the corner. That is not best practice in 2022. What is best practice is a more robust situational awareness training where we teach our staff and students to be fully cognizant of their surroundings, the people in it, and their situation. It is a vital factor for preventing and responding to an immediate threat to the school. So it's responding in the immediacy rather than just being a little bit more reactive. So what we did as a committee was we identified all the situational awareness training options that were available to us. So they were Run, Hide, Fight, they were I Love You Guys, that is the real name of it, and Alice. And obviously we did talk about this, we touched on it on the May 4th Safety and Security Committee. And so I'm going to pass this, and we're going to talk a little bit about the process that we went into as a committee.
So we wanted to share that the committee, the Security and Safety Committee, spent a lot of time having robust, thorough, and thoughtful conversations regarding current practice, their instructional day, and research data and evidence. During a high-stress situation or crisis scenarios, stress is activated, and then that initiates the body's physiological response with increased levels of stress hormones. This initiates a fight, flight, or freeze response you may have heard of before. While we have many parts to the brain, I want to highlight two parts. The upstairs brain, this is a common symbol for the brain. The upstairs brain, AKA the neocortex, is your logical thinking center of your brain. This is where you organize and process information, and this is where you want to have all your decisions being made. The downstairs brain, specifically the limbic system, which is your midbrain, is your emotional center, and your reptilian brain, which is your survival center. Both of those places, especially your reptilian brain, really have no future, no past. It's immediate response system. That's where your fight, flight, and freeze occur. Unfortunately, when you're in your downstairs brain, rational thought and thinking is non-existent. Unfortunately, that also causes a person to go right into their survival instincts. Here's a visual of those parts of the brain. When you are in the downstairs brain, it is highly recommended to not make decisions, not have rational conversations until you can calm down and get back up to your upstairs brain. It's quite common in our practice in regular instruction with our students. It's why people shouldn't make decisions when in an argument with a loved one, etc. So we also discussed data that we learned. Two of the sources were studies done by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Secret Service, and the National Threat Assessment Center. A lot of their work also feeds the input or provides input for the Threat Assessment Committee and our mental health committees. In the first picture on the left, this depicts a study that was done called the Averting Targeted School Violence in 2021. And it depicts the responses of 25 plotters of a school attack. The locations specified are listed below. There's a couple other places underneath classrooms, but I'd like to highlight that the top 5 locations specified were not in classrooms, making it highly problematic when we have students who go to Encore, transition in hallways, arrive and dismiss through multiple doors, even your cafeterias here. If you look around this room, we don't have an opportunity to hide in flight or hide in a traditional lockdown. We have to have some other options. The picture on the right is from an analysis of targeted school violence published in 2019. And in that analysis, researchers studied between 2008 and 2017, 41 incidences of targeted school violence. In those 41 incidences, 44% from start to finish, the attack happened in 1 minute or less. If you look, the majority of those instances, the start to finish time was 5 minutes or less. So why is that especially relevant? Because in 32% of those cases, first responders didn't arrive until 1 to 5 minutes of notification, and 27% greater than 5 to 10 minutes after notification. This is especially critical in that we have to make decisions quickly on our own as students and staff. pressing upon the importance of having to have several options for decision-making instantly. Doesn't like me. Oh, the other, there's two. Additionally, we looked at evidence on situational awareness, and these two statements stood out to the committee. Unlike traditional lockdown approaches, multi-option responses with barricading, evacuating, and active resisting make potential victims harder targets to offenders to victimize. And additionally, by Alice, the Alice Training Institute, they stated that potential victims become hard, dynamic targets for the shooter rather than passive, static targets. All of this data, research, and evidence suggests that repeated practice in high-stress scenarios decreases over-reliance on that reptilian brain. I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Diaz, who's going to discuss our recommendation.
So we have come together, talking with our committee and then with you last time, and then now, using everything and all of the research and all the data, we have a formal recommendation to move forward with Alice. It was a unanimous committee recommendation, and we wanted to go through the cost to be transparent. So it would be $26,000. There would be $16,000 to start as the initial startup fee, and then an ongoing cost of $10,000. This has already been included in the budget that Mr. Wildman presented earlier today. Okay. This slide is very important. This is the slide that really goes through and talks about what is Alice? What does it mean? What is it? How come this is the backbone of the program, for real. So we have Alice, the A stands for alert. And this is really just to inform people of a threat, giving as much information as possible. Which entrance did we first notice that something was happening? What is the person wearing? Basically, how tall they are, where are they moving toward? Just give as much information as possible. A lockdown is where students and staff can choose, and that's the very important part that goes back to the empowering. If it makes sense in your circumstance to lock down, then you can choose to do so, and barricade the room. So now we're not just sitting in one spot and closing the door and wondering what's going to happen. We've chosen, based on everything going on, that we want to lock down and we're going to barricade. Okay, and then we also then have the I for inform, and that is really to inform first responders. So it's different than the alert. The alert is something's happening in this building, this is happening, this is what's going on, this is what they look like. But then when the first responders arrive, it's really, this is giving every possible bit of detail to the first responders, including contacting 911. Counter, we will talk about that a little bit later, and as we did before on May 4th, counter is where it's the last effort resort, and it does not mean to fight. It means that we make noise, we might throw something against the wall, we could be like a zigzag person in a room, and erratic, like running around, just to throw the attacker off base or off point. And as we have discussed before, and will continue to do so, in elementary buildings, we will be removing the counter. So we will only have that in middle school and then into the high school when they partner with District 127. Okay? And then evacuate. Again, if it's safe to do so, you're encouraged to evacuate the building. So remove yourself from the threat. If we were in this room, there are multiple exits, we would most likely evacuate, right? Because that would make the most sense. The other thing that we wanted to point out is that, yes, this is in order of ALICE because it's the acronym, so that's how we're going to remember, right? We're going to move from that reptilian brain to logic, okay, it's an acronym, this is how we're going to make sense. But we have 3 different options. We can lock down, we can counter, and we can evacuate. And maybe we're going to start locking down and realize, oh my gosh, no, we can get out this exit right here, door number 7, let's go. We can make that informed decision and do that. Or maybe we can start evacuating and then we got some information from the alert like, ooh, door number 7 could be a potential danger, reverse plan. And so the more training that we have, we're able to move through the lockdown, the counter, and the evacuate on a fluid basis. You don't just have to choose one and stay. I just wanted to point that out. So what is the value of Alice, besides everything we just talked about? It is the leading edge of active shooter response, so it's a national It's a national leaderboard. It has the largest user base. So there's 5,548 school districts who use Alice, just over 3,000 businesses, 893 local municipalities, and just over 5,000 police departments and have been trained, certified, endorsed, and use this. It is the most complete program that exists, and it is extensive national train-the-trainer model. So that's very important. So we would start with the leadership team and all of us, make sure that we become first initially trained, and then continue training our entire staff, maybe even Arbor, the food service, talk to Durham, so everyone is following the same procedures and know exactly what is to be expected. It's an e-learning portal, but there's also 2 days that you are in person, and then the rest of it is online, so it's a nice hybrid model. It's age and ability appropriate for teachers, like we talked about before. All staff will be trained on all the components of Alice, but our students at the elementary would then be removing the counter. Okay. And then it provides organizational and level certificates. Further benefits is that it's widely used by our peers, and again, District 127 uses it as well. So when our students leave middle school and go to the high school, it's the same procedures, the same expectations, and everyone in the community, all 7 of them, are following the same active shooter protocol. Again, it's nationally endorsed by law enforcement. The Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the United States Department of Education really do back this program. And what we spoke about before is that they will stand with us. If we have to go through the worst, we know that we are not alone in that. Okay. Again, it speaks to best practices. We are empowering our students and staff to make the best decisions based on the circumstances and the situation in which they find themselves. It is blended training that includes e-learning and hands-on. The curriculum is based for individuals with diverse learning styles and varying ages and abilities. And it is a role-based training that teaches us how to survive in settings that are not traditional classrooms. So just like Ms. Lorenzo was explaining, the majority of the tasks do not take place in classrooms. So, okay, now we have to know, okay, what are we going to do? And we have repeated and repeated training, which then moves us out of that reptilian brain to be more logical and be like, okay, this is how we have to react. These are scenarios, and hopefully we never have to do the real thing, but if we did, we've practiced enough and enough in different areas that we know that we can rely on ourselves to protect our students. And just to repeat that one more time, we would not have the counter for our youngest students, and it would just be the acronym of ALLY. Okay. And then, if we have to live through the worst, which we hope we never, ever, ever have to do, Alice will be there for us to kind of rebuild and make sure that we can figure out how to make school safe again and to be back open in the community and be together. So they have a trauma-informed approach. So they have the 4 R's. And the first one is to realize, and realize that educators have a basic understanding of what trauma is and how it affects the physical and emotional mental health of students. So we all might show trauma in a different way. So we need to just realize everyone's going to have some sort of trauma. And then we have to recognize it. Maybe for one person, they're not going to eat, and for another person, they might be acting out. So we need to look at what does it look like, what are the signs of trauma, and how can we help? And then we respond to that in a very caring way, right? We apply a trauma-informed approach when responding to students that follow the module of evidence-based procedures. And we're caring, and we're there, and we're gonna move through it. And then finally, we're going to resist re-traumatization. So very similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, there will be triggers. There will be something, oh my goodness, I don't want to be in the cafeteria because, oh my goodness, all these memories are coming back to me. How do we move past that? How do we rebuild? And how do we come together as a community that is stronger? That is what the 4 R's focus on. I will pass this back to Mr. Wildman for our next steps.
Okay, so we put together a tentative, it's not approved yet, timeline about what we felt would be a way to implement this with fidelity. And in my last district, we actually did community engagement meetings when we did this at 112. And so we thought that this would be a very good thing to repeat here, to actually disseminate the information and make sure that all the parents were fully aware of what their students will be taking part in moving forward. We did mention the train the trainer, which would be the leadership team over the summer, so it would be all 20 members of the leadership would go through the 2 full days of the Alice Training Institute, and they would become Alice trainers. And then those leaders would go out to the buildings and train all the teachers and all the staff. So it would be really good that all the training would be done by our own people. And again, we just talked about this training option. If we can collaborate, move forward with District 127, we will do that because it makes sense, because they're all our students and they're all our families. And we looked at a tentative date of October 7th, which is an Institute Day, for the first in-person discussions and learnings, and obviously we'll be working forward online as well. And we actually presented this slide to you on May 4th, but we did want to bring it back. This is other considerations that schools must provide an alternative safety education instruction related to an active threat or active shooter event to students who do not participate in a walk-through lockdown drill, to provide them with essential information, training, and instruction through less sensorial, good word, safety training methods. So we will obviously follow that, and I know we've talked a lot about the opt-in, opt-out, and all the different curricula that we've discussed this evening, and we would honor that in a similar way. That is our recommendation. Do you have any questions for us?
Jessica?
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. Based on conversations I've had with people in other workplaces or other districts, they really appreciate the empowerment factor of Alice. So thank you for all your hard work.
I want to echo the thank you as well. During public comment, I think one of our community members referenced 1830s and how important it is to just contemporize our training, our education, as the world around us evolves and changes. And literally just last night, I was talking with my student at home that said, "Mom, I don't really understand the point of these lockdown drills or active shooter drills, because most likely the kid went to my school and would already know what these drills are like. It would already know how we're hiding in the classroom in a corner or a closet." And I was like, wow, like, you know, that was really concerning for me. So, you know, hearing the level of detail with Alice is really reassuring, because it's situational based and it's not a rote, we're going to go to this room. So, you know, it also gives the kids a level of assurance too, that, well, you know what, even if this was a former student or current student, we have multiple tools in our toolkit available to help keep us safe, as opposed to something that, you know, we may have already shown our hand to a potential bad actor. So this is really great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, can I ask one more question?
Sorry?
So thank you so much for your diligence in communicating this and also in researching it. As you were talking, I heard you say, and I want to make sure I heard correctly, that there will be multiple role-playing in order to subvert what goes on, to move an initial amygdala reaction into the cortex. So it brought to mind a memory. I was teaching small kids, and I was telling a story about a mean king, and he did all these things. He threw frogs, and he threw locusts, and all these mean things, and I was very animated in telling it, and I was like, "And a mean king," and kids burst into tears. They were so engaged in the story because they're imaginative, and that's the age at which they're doing that work. So I am curious about what the mental health impact will be on kids if they are repeatedly rehearsing a school shooter. And does that have any impact on how safe they feel in school when the drill has ended?
I think either of us could. Maybe. So my point of reference is the traditional lockdown, in that they're already kind of engaging in those. It's what they know. Unfortunately, it's exactly what they know. But from what I understand of Alice, it's really, all of that mental health support is embedded in their program design and their training modules. I'm going to ask Mr. Wildman, because he experienced that.
So I went through the Alice Training Institute. In my last district, I was a train-the-trainer, and it's a very deep couple of days to go through the training. And I did actually warn my colleagues, I said, it's not a nice training, because you're simulating some pretty bad things, and you're putting yourself in a bad place, and it's not nice. You know, these are things we hope we never have to do. Okay, so let's be honest with that. But it is the curriculum, the program is put together in a way that's very robust. It allows you to go away and think, and it definitely challenges a lot of your conceptions. And in terms of the kind of empowerment side, I think it really, I was amazed in my last district, the amount of emails I got from teachers who went through the training and said to me, thank you. Thank you for bringing this here, because this is exactly what we've needed, and we feel empowered in case this ever happens. Again, we don't want it to happen, but in the event that it does, we're talking about saving lives, and it's really a number. We really want that number to be 0. And there are some difficult conversations that have to happen, but as best as possible, they do try and be very aware of all those issues in the curriculum. Hope that answers the question.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think the next one is Dr. Diaz again, and is the update on the English Learners Program.
All right. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to all of you about a department update. I'm very excited to share with you some of our data. As always, we are going to relate everything to the mission. So we are empowering learners, creating equity, and cultivating community. This update really does talk about empowering learners and focuses on creating equity. Some of you might remember this slide 6 years ago. That was the last big update. The ELPDT, the project and design team came, and then we had 4 recommendations. The first one was to please see if we can support a systematic, equitable late start bilingual program, maybe have an equitable transition program of instruction, so for students who speak languages other than Spanish. If we could have some RTI in native language, and then also ongoing community education programming best practices. And it is with great pleasure to say that 6 years later, not only did we meet all of these, but we totally exceeded them. So it's really fun. And so here we are in 2022. We have 647 students in the EL program. We have 43 languages. We have 40 newcomers. We have a one-way dual language program from pre-K or kinder in Avon and Prairie View. Park Campus, Woodview, and Meadowview all had programs this year, but due to enrollment numbers and best practices, we decided to merge the Woodview strand to Meadowview and the Park strand to Prairie View. And by doing that, we then were able to offer, district will provide transportation for all the families who stay in the bilingual program or the one-way dual language program. And then everyone will roll up. So everyone will go to Frederick, and then from Frederick to GMS. And then as we shared in a superintendent report a few weeks ago, the high school is ready for us in a two-way dual language program. So our students can really earn the seal of biliteracy and become truly biliterate and bicultural. Here are a list of our high incidence languages. Spanish still continues to be the second highest. English is first and then Spanish, all the way down to Tamil. And Tamil this year replaced Gujarati, but they are both languages that are spoken in the southern part of India. So just want to let you know. And here's a table of growth over time, and I won't spend too much time going through every little bit, but I did want to share that in 2017, we had 429 students who took the access test, and that is that English proficiency test that students take in January and February, and they hope to earn like a 4.8, which shows proficiency, and then they exit the bilingual, or they exit the program. You can stay in the one-way dual language program to become biliterate and bicultural, but in the state's eyes, you've met proficiency. A healthy program usually would like to exit between 10 and 12%. So in 2017, we were exiting 3% of our students, and in 2022, 8.5%, which is pretty cool. Here are some ISB terminology, things that you'll start to hear more frequently. There has been a little bit of a shift from English learners as being the overall umbrella is now considered being dual language learners. So you are a DLL if you speak a language other than English or simultaneous languages at home from birth to age 5. So we are DLLs, and then when you come to school, you become an English learner because basically it starts in 5th grade, or 5 years old. So K through 12th grade, you can become an EL. But DLL now is basically the overarching, and that is what you will see from ISB. Dual language programs, they are programs that use both languages and develop they use both the targeted language, so English and a targeted language. For us, it's Spanish. And they use that throughout all of the years to be sure that you can become bilingual, bicultural, and have bilingualism. And so these are the 3 Bs. Nothing really changed there, but they are the focus of our program and our curriculum. So bilingualism, the ability to speak 2 languages, biliteracy, to read and write in both languages, and biculturalism, to understand and respect that with language comes culture. All right, this graph you also saw 6 years ago. This is one of the best research studies by Thomas and Collier that proves and shows how EL programs and the research data and how they compare to national norms. This has been the backbone of most dual language programs for many, many years. The studies have been replicated in many countries, and it still holds very, very consistent. So the NCE, from 0 to 70, NCE, is the national normed achievement level, percent of students who achieve on national state tests. So for us, it could be the PARC or the IAR, it could be the National Science Assessment, and Access. So all of those get put into the NCE, and then across the bottom are the grades. So 6 years ago, we had an ESL pullout, which showed about 12% of students meeting or exceeding on national norms. And now we are the blue line, which is about 62% of ELs meet or exceed on national norms. That's the general data. And what's pretty cool is this is our data. So in 2020, we had 74% of our ELs meeting or exceeding national norms. So we are actually a little bit above that chart, but proof that, that the dual language program is really working and our students are achieving high levels in both languages. And in 2021, due to COVID, we were held harmless. So we still have the 74%. And in 2022, Access preliminary results have been released, but this data is not updated yet. Okay, so what are the goals of a dual language program, or a one-way dual language program specifically? We want to take advantage of the optimal learning window of when you can really input a lot of language in your targeted language through an allocation model. We want to always teach the highest. So we're teaching the highest academic Spanish and the highest academic English very specifically and very, again, through a language allocation model. So we might have literacy is going to be in Spanish and math might be in English, but it's very structured and very developmental and age appropriate. And we want to really inspire students, their appreciation for their native language and the languages of their peers. We also differentiate instruction to reflect linguistic, cultural, and academic backgrounds. And so if one of our teachers from Spain was here for majority, but what's really cool, if you walk into her room, she has a language chart of these are all the words that I would say in Spain, and this is what they mean in Spanish from Mexico. And then we have Spanish from Peru. And so it's a really cool interlinguistic word wall, really, of all the different ways to say pretty much, if you want to say blanket. These are the 3 ways you can say blanket. It's kind of fun. And so we go through that, but we also do that same type of thing in English. And we want to raise self-esteem for all of our students. Okay, so what is the program? I've kind of explained that, but this is just a quick summary. A dual language program is instruction in 2 languages to actually obtain full proficiency. And we are starting to see that students obtain full proficiency as early as 4th grade, when more than half of our students, it's about 60% of our students in the one-way dual language program have already met or exceeded on Access. So they are staying in the program to truly become bilingual, but they've already been able to dominate both of the languages. Dual language programs have been implemented for 40 years in the United States, so it's not very new, even though it sort of sometimes feels new. And there are 398 dual language programs across the country, and 94% of them have targeted Spanish as their second language, so English and Spanish dual language programs. Okay. Is there research that supports this type of program? Yes, absolutely. And so a couple of things that I wanted to highlight from a lot of research is that language studies have increased listening skills, memory, and a greater understanding of one's own language. And then students who acquire advanced levels of proficiency in second languages often experience cognitive and linguistic advantages when they compare to monolingual students. And that research you can also see in about a 4th grade reading level. So if you have a 4th grade reading level in your native language, everything transfers to that second language very quickly, and also with very much nuances about the language. Like, this is the plural possessive, and this is how I use it in Spanish. It's fun to see the students share those things. I know that it is 9:15, but I would like, if it's okay with all of you, to do an activity, and it's called the Endless Language. And so, did any of you, have you all participated in this before? And even in the audience, you can play too. It's okay? All right, so you need to find a partner, please, and decide among your partner who is going to be partner A and who's going to be partner B. Partner A, you're going to speak first, okay? And if you need a group of 3, totally fine. Okay? Yes? You? Yes? Okay, perfect. Okay, so if you have decided who's going to be partner A, can you please tell your partner what you did yesterday without using any words that have the letter N in it? So dinner, if you ate dinner, you can't use that word because there's a letter N in it, right? You couldn't use the word went either because there's a letter N, okay? All right, please begin. Okay, we're going to come back together, please. So finish your thought or your word or your sentence. Okay? If you were speaking, how did it feel? Pardon? Stilted. Okay, nice. Thank you. How else? Slow. All right. Good. If you were listening, were you able to understand what was happening, or how did you feel? Yeah? You were able to understand? Good. Everyone? Good? All right. Again, if you were speaking, did you use like hand gestures, or did you feel like, oh my goodness, I can't look for different words? Different words, yes. Dr. Mack, did you use anything in French? Oh, okay. Okay. I was wondering. Okay. Got it? Nice, thank you. Okay, so for the second part, we're going to switch. So if you were speaking, you're now listening. If you were listening, you're now speaking, right? Can you please explain the process of photosynthesis to your partner? But again, you can't use the letter N, so I'm sorry, sun and green are out. No sun, no green. Okay, so explain photosynthesis to your partners. Thank you, go ahead. Okay, we'll come back together. All right, finish your thought, your word. Good? Okay, if you were speaking, how did you feel if you were speaking?
I felt I was set up.
Ah, okay, all right.
Yeah, I felt I was set up with the hardest question.
Okay, all right. What else?
I readily knew I wanted to be partner A because I did know what the activity was. So I used my prior knowledge.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, how else? If you were speaking, how did you feel?
Frustrated.
Okay, less intelligent? Stumped? Okay, good.
It
And
felt a little unbalanced relative to the first question.
Sure, yes, that makes sense. There's a reason for that, good. If you were listening, did you understand what your partner was explaining? Like, would you be able to say, oh yes, that's photosynthesis, without the background knowledge?
It was more like picking words. Yeah.
Picking words, okay.
So just like, I mean,
yes.
if I can see what you're trying to do, like,
yes.
really like pulling word, like
yeah.
a word that you know.
Perfect, yes, okay. Well, synonyms, right? Like, what word did you know to make that? That makes sense. Any other comments from anyone? Ooh. Yeah. Yes, exactly, exactly.
I mean,
frustrated, you know what you want to say, you just can't say it yet, right? I'm sure every single one of you can explain the process of photosynthesis. Yes?
I love his explanation.
Okay.
I caught myself listening harder for an N-word.
Right, right.
That makes sense. Okay, yeah, thank you. That makes sense, that happens, sure. Yes?
And this is fascinating. I might use this activity in my class.
Yeah.
Because the first conversation was more relevant to me and my life.
Yes.
And the second conversation was information that was not necessarily input that I
Exactly.
needed to be successful in the language.
Yes.
But I needed to understand, I needed to be successful in the first conversation in order to navigate my daily life.
Exactly, exactly. So what we just did is an activity for someone who has been in the country for 3 years. So if you've been in the country for 3 years, that is about what you would be able to expect for social language and something that you could expect academically, which is all fancy for Bics and Kelps, right? So social versus academic. If you were to take out a vowel, the A-list language, the I-list language, it would be a newcomer who's been in the country for less than 3 months. Right? So this is interesting, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so I appreciate that everyone participated, thank you. And the reason we did that is because I wanted to explain and make a bridge to how many newcomers have been coming to Grays Lake and making Grays Lake home. In 2015, we had 9 newcomers, and now, as I had shared before, we have 40. They come from 19 different countries, and the majority do not speak Spanish as their native language. So that's important to note too. So what have we done to help make newcomers feel at home and happy here? We have created a newcomer curriculum council, and that's the teachers and some administrators, and we just figure out what kind of experiences do our families need. And one of the very first things we put together was a newcomer orientation. So it is one time before school starts and another time after school, and all newcomer families are able to come over. We have a color-coded folder for each school, survival language, pictures of who you should contact. Here's some phrases, my child's sick today, and this is the number to call. We've also provided a lot of in and outside of school experiences for the entire family. So pre-pandemic, we would take a tour of Grays Lake. We have gone to the library. Pandemic, we've had authors come in and visit. We have had just virtual tours, right? So we just continue with these different types of experiences. And some of you had mentioned GAIN today. That is part of the Newcomer Curriculum Council and our way to connect, network families together. Okay, so even with our newcomers and all of our students in total, we are focusing on biliteracy. Our district is focused on biliteracy and bilingualism through best practice strategies, which include GLAD and DAR, thinking maps, and literacy squared. We are considered a pathways school, so we are able to set the pathway to bilingualism from pre-K through 8th grade next year, thank you, and then off to the high school. And I did get to speak with the high school, and about 10% of the students are qualifying for the seal of biliteracy, and they just imagine that number is just going to continue to go up. It's exciting. And then for curriculum, we've already spoken quite a bit about curriculum, but also the Spanish language arts standards, which are finally published and ready for implementation, so we're going to be working through that. We absolutely keep grade level content, and we keep grade level scope and sequences, so students are always taught to the highest. And then we just deliver the lesson based on the language allocation model, and then through GLAD and DAR and literacy squared. And my last bit is to explain, well, what about everybody else? What about all of our newcomers and the students who are not in a one-way dual language program? What are we doing for them? And this was our TPI, or Transitional Program of Instruction. which then became our ESL pullout model, is now a teacher of record. And what that means is that the students go with their EL teacher for about 90 minutes, and it's usually in literacy, and they have their ELD, which English Language Development block, and they have literacy, and they're going through best practice strategies and learning everything, again, grade level content for about 90 minutes, same standards, same activities, just multimodal, and different types of EL practices are infused through there. At the upper grades, so starting actually in 5th grade, sometimes you'll have teacher of record is for history, but definitely 6th up, it's history as well as ELD. All right. And then in 6 years or next time, what are we going to do? Where are we going to focus and look forward in the future? Is hopefully to look and start exploring in the 23-24 school year, exploring two-way dual language models. What would it mean? What do we need? What would it look like? What models are out there? And see what it would take for us to become a successful two-way dual. And that would be in alignment with district goal number 2, which is to investigate options for newer revised course offerings with emphasis on world language, dual language, and encore opportunities. Thank you. Questions?
Stephanie, I just wanted to thank you. When I moved to Grayslake, just fun fact about me, I actually was looking for a dual language program for my kids and couldn't find one in an area that we wanted to live in, and had to spend quite a bit of time in the car carting my kids to language programs. It's expensive to sign them up for language immersion camps and trips, so this would have been, I would have loved this and would have, I think, encouraged me with no hesitation to move to Grayslake. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Before you sit down, Dr. Diaz, Mr. Lewis, could you just restate for the board what you said this morning in cabinet when Dr. Diaz did this presentation? I think they should hear it.
So I shared earlier today that to me, it is just so exciting to see how far this program has come in the 6 years with Dr. Diaz leading us. Our demographics definitely are changing, and she has been upfront and ready and prepared and organized, and she knew what was coming, and she helped our staff get there. So I was just so, again, while I work with Stephanie about many of these things, to see this in actually a presentation, it's pretty powerful to think about what we're offering our students and how far our teachers have come in understanding all of those things. And so I shared just my appreciation this morning to her about, wow, I mean, this is really great.
Thank you. Okay, next is IASB resolution or amendment considerations. Did we have any that we were going to discuss? Did anybody provide any? Nope. Okay. So then we can move on to topics for future agenda items.
Yeah. So we have, for the June 1st meeting, we have way fewer presentations. Let's start with that. But we are planning to have a presentation from Heather Lorenzo about Care Solace. We're looking for 2 approvals, the literacy resource approval, the health resource approval. We'll be bringing fiscal year 23 tentative budget and a purchase of the kitchen equipment. And then June 15th, we'll start with a policy committee because we didn't want Mr. Lewis to walk out the door without having one final policy committee. And then we'll plan to do a strategic plan goals update for you at that meeting as well. That's all I have.
Okay. Next, we're up to our second round of public comments. Go ahead.
We have Robin Dunlop.
Hello, there we go. My name is Robin Dunlop, Grayslake resident, short-time listener, first-time caller. I've got a few I've been listening all night, and there's a few topics that you all have been very engaged with, and I really appreciate seeing how engaged you are with the various comments and topics that have come up. A number of you expressed interest with the environmental student group that came and presented, and you were asking how could you affect bigger change? What could they do? What could they change in what you do? How could you implement this better? And then minutes later, we had a presentation about a $6 million bond issuance and the banks that you are going to be using or possibly using to underwrite that or get that money. And I just want to mention that Chase Bank is fossil fuel, is 36% higher funder of fossil fuel projects than the second next bank in the world. It underwrites more fossil fuel projects than any other bank. And perhaps the lowest bid should not be the winning bid if it's also in direct opposition to what we are trying to do with our environmental goals. Okay? I don't know if you have an option when you're making decisions about where you get your funding from or who you bank with, but I think it's a consideration to be had as we go forward. Sorry. Secondly, and lastly, gentleman Wildron, sorry, I can't say your last name, mentioned that there's a budget being presented soon that includes provisions for buying or changing our vehicle purchases. I believe, I don't know the extent, qualifications, or capabilities of those vehicles, but environmentally speaking, electrification of transportation is a great topic of investment and opportunity right now. And I think that it behooves us to investigate the opportunity to buy alternative fuel, electric or otherwise, vehicles in our budgets as they go forward. Every year, more and more of the possible vehicle allocation is electric, and I think it warrants investigation further than just the status quo and what has been done before. So I'd like to just say those things for you. That is what you can do to affect the changes we want and to improve our ARC score, as you all have said before you want to do. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments.
Maylene Van Digling.
Oh, what was I pushing? I don't know, sorry. Hi, I'm Eileen Van Diglen. My children are no longer in D46, but I'm a substitute teacher in D46, and I only substitute at Frederick and GMS because elementary kids have too much drama, high school kids have too much attitude, and middle school is the perfect blend for me. So I don't have a presentation or any data for you. I'm talking to you all from my heart. And I don't know if this is the right place to do it, but I love the segue into this about the health curriculum and ALICE, because those two things are what is most important for these students and these teachers and the bus drivers and the paraprofessionals and the support staff and the office. We talk so much about the mental and emotional health of the students and making sure they're okay. But I feel like the teachers, the bus drivers, the support staff are neglected in that. Of what I've seen this year, and these past 2 years have been the hardest 2 years for any teacher, veteran teacher, new teacher, anybody that has ever taught. But right now I feel they're screaming, Alice, because they do not feel supported in their lives or what they're saying, or they're not being heard. And it's hard. I can't tell you how many times I've walked through these halls and seen teachers crying, veteran teachers crying, because of the trauma and the stress and the frustrations that they are having. And it's heartbreaking. And I've been in some of these classes where, it's hard. The kids have trauma, which then goes on to the classroom, which it just snowballs. And it's just very, very difficult. And I talked to bus drivers, and there was a situation where a bus driver was driving kids home, taking these children, which is a hard job in itself. I don't know how they focus with the kids in there. And the kids were throwing rocks at the bus driver. And a rock flew and hit the windshield by the driver while she was driving. And there were no consequences. Nothing was done. And that's a lot of what the teachers are saying. I feel like there are no consequences. A student can hit me or spit at me or yell at me or throw things in my room, and I send them down, and they come back in the room like nothing even happened. And how hard is that? I mean, you feel attacked. You feel emotionally abused, mentally abused, and it's really hard to focus on educating these children and looking out for these children when you don't even have the energy to look out for yourself. There are a lot of paras that are leaving. There are a lot of teachers that are leaving. And I ask why, and they're, with everything in life, we don't get paid enough. We understand that. My son gets a $15 an hour job, and I'm a para, and I barely make $14. And I'm working with these kids. I can't do it anymore, physically, mentally. I can't handle it. I don't feel supported. Those are the words that come out of their mouths. And when I come into sub, I try to do the best that I can for them, to make things easier for them, so they don't feel the stress of guilt because they couldn't make it that day. They want to be there for the kids. They're scared of what the kids are going to learn or do. And I'll come in and I'll try my best. But there's not many of us substitutes out there to do this. This year is the first year where I've had to double up as a substitute, where I've had to teach the class that I applied for, as well as other classrooms, because there weren't any subs to fill those positions. One year, I had to have all of the band kids, 75 band kids, by myself, because they didn't have enough substitutes to fill 3 people. One person filling 3 people. Now, I can handle it. I taught in Waukegan. I had my own choir. I know how to teach music. I know how to teach. I have an education degree. I know how to do this. But I'm telling you, even though I know how to do it, it's hard. And the teachers need support just as much as the students. So I'm asking for maybe someday you all can go into the classroom and substitute a class for a teacher as a goodwill, or even sign up to be a substitute teacher, and once a month. I know you all have jobs. I know you all volunteer your time here. But in order for our district to get stronger together, we need to be there for the children, interact with the children, and listen to the teachers, the substitute teachers, who we get none of this training. I get a piece of paper about Alice. That's all. Do you know how terrifying it is? As a substitute teacher, when they're like, lockdown, and I'm like, oh, okay, quick, read this paper. Okay, try to keep these kids quiet. Okay, here are the doorknobs shaking, and they're pounding on the door. Try to keep the kids quiet. I don't know all the kids' names. I don't know who they are. More trauma. So I'm asking also for myself, maybe subs could get a little bit more training in what's happening in the classrooms and how to deal with it. I apologize for bringing it down. We had fun with the no N word. That was fun. And I love those activities that I get to do in the classroom like that. I love interacting with the kids. And I know all these teachers have that same passion, but their light is flickering. And I want to hear the excitement of new curriculum from these teachers. I want to hear the excitement from the teachers. But they're screaming Alice, and they need help. So admin, school board, superintendents, everybody, if we could just listen to the teachers a little bit more and try to find ways to support them, that'll be the change for the better that I believe our district needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, was there any more, Stephanie? Okay, thank you. I need a motion to go into a closed session. It should be a fairly short session.
So moved. Second.
Nash?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Mack? Aye. Albert?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye.
Braden?
Aye.
Okay, we don't expect any action items to become, or action coming out of the session, so we'll be adjourning the meeting shortly thereafter.